The storm that struck Winterfell on the night the letter came seemed intent on carving new shapes into the old stone. Rain hammered the ramparts and filled the courtyard with silver veils, and the direwolves in the Godswood raised their snouts to bellow at thunder that sounded too much like ancient drums. In the high tower where Lyanna Stark kept her little bedchamber, neither the Maiden's Wing nor the Lady's Solar suited her. Wind hissed through arrow slits and rattled shutters, as though the storm wished to witness her reading. The parchment bore the broken seal of the hand of the king. Even cracked and sodden, it stood out. Green wax molded around the hand's badge, a tower crowned by flames. But what mattered more than wax was the threadbare ribbon slipped through a hole in the fold. Rich crimson once, now dulled by distance. She knew that braid. Rhaegar had braided it himself at Harrenhal, laughing softly when she teased that rubies ought to decorate it. The ribbon meant this letter had crossed half a kingdom hand to hand, passing from loyal courier to loyal courier, untouchable by maester or raven lest inked ciphers be broken. And still, it had found her. Sequestered in Winterfell after her brother Brandon's betrothal tour. Beneath fathers and brothers, who watched her as hawks watch a lone fledgling near a cliff's edge. She should not have cut the wax. She should have flung letter and ribbon both into the brazier. But she had opened it, drawn by memory's scent of parchment and tourney dust, and the melancholy music Rhaegar had played beneath the great weirwood, when red leaves showered around them like blood in a fairy tale. Lyanna, wild, furious, restless Lyanna, who dared joust in secret and ride bareback down the King's Road, felt a tremor she could not name as she read the words. I have seen the shape of fires yet unkindled. All paths converge on Winterfell. The dragon's song is ending, and I know now who must sing its dirge. Cryptic nonsense, she first thought. Rhaegar spoke in prophecy as often as plain speech, as though the harp in his hands had replaced a tongue. But then came a plea. A prince alone cannot douse a wildfire crown. A wolf maid who fights beneath the moon must raise a sword the dragon forged to shatter his own throne. North and south will meet where snows melt into ashes. Come to me, Lyanna. Come to the Tower of Joy. If you still trust the boy who set rubies in your hair, ride now. Below the signature, no royal flourish, merely Rhaegar. The ink bled, whether from rain or the smudge of the courier's thumb she could not tell, but it looked like a single teardrop fallen from the words. She folded the letter a dozen times until the parchment crunched. She paced past the brazier, meaning to hurl it in. Yet her hand would not obey. Instead, she pressed the wad into her cloak's lining, behind a patch no one would examine. Then she blew out each candle, except the stub that lit her journal page. She inked no words. She merely traced the candle's glow across the blank margin and listened to the storm rattling the castle like a giant at the gate. When frost turned to crusted snow at dawn, Lyanna rode out alone beneath a sky bruised purple by departing clouds. Her stallion, Storm's Edge, sleek and coal-black, snorted mist like a warhorse in the Vale. She had stolen out with only her sword, a half-forgotten northern steel bastard blade that had belonged to some Stark cousin dead a century. The pommel had once been a wolf's head. Now it worn to the suggestion of a snout. Maester Wallace would say such a blade was no lady's toy. That pleased her. Winterfell's gatehouse guards bowed but did not ask why she rode without escort. Her father's commands, "Let my daughter breathe while she may," had softened them. They believed, perhaps. She went to greet Brandon returning with his bride-to-be. They could not imagine that the quiet girl who hated embroidery might strike south before dawn to meet what some called a kidnapper prince. She took the west road first, letting Storm's Edge break ice puddles until the clatter faded into pine hush. Only then did she fling back her hood and suck in air that tasted of snowmelt and pine resin. Freedom's taste. It was almost enough to forget prophecy. Almost. 3 days' ride brought her to the neck of the Green Fork where a ferry awaited, roped by mossy pilings. The ferryman gawked at her cloak of gray and white fur, then at the sword strapped across her back. He took her coin with trembling fingers and said naught till they were halfway across the torrent. "Cold season to be riding south alone, my lady. A colder season awaits if I remain. So folk keep saying. Wolves howlin' in daylight, Maester's talking about summer's dyin'. They say south there's talk o' rebellion. Whispers says King Eris gone crack. Cracked men shatter of their own weight. Aye, yet broken kings fall on whoever stands below. He eyed her. Stand careful, milady. Watchful words. She answered with a nod, though she wondered if any caution could avail her now. In the pouch at her saddle horn lay Rhaegar's letter and a second scrap. Her own note, penned before dawn, addressed to Eddard. I ride south for my own choosing. Seek me not with swords, for I do not run as prey. Tell father I carry the north's ice within me. She sealed it with plain wax. She prayed her brother would understand. She prayed he would not follow. Marching south, time slowed until each league felt like a season. Yet rumor galloped faster than any horse. She passed crossroads inns where small folk muttered of the Mad King's latest burnings, of Lord Rickard Stark called to stand for treason in King's Landing, of wildfire prepared beneath the Red Keep vaults. Lyanna listened from shadowed benches, hood hiding her face, and her heart knotted. If her father rode south into the dragon's jaws, who could protect Ned or Brandon? Did Rhaegar know his sire meant slaughter? And if he knew, what did it mean that he still summoned her? At Maidenpool, she received her first tale. Two men in Lannister crimson and gold, well fed, chatting idly outside the stable where Storm's Edge was watered. Their lips formed questions when they looked her way. Alone? Northern? Woman carrying a sword? She walked by them with snow in her voice. One half bowed, but their eyes tracked her when she left the town. She cut across wooded hills, forcing her stallion at night to avoid patrol roads. Twice she dreamed of blue winter roses blooming red at the heart. Each time she woke with damp lashes and the taste of ash on her tongue. On the 12th morning, after leaving Winterfell, she reached the marches. Dorne's Edge loomed beyond ragged ridges. Sun-bleached boulders scattered like broken eggs of some extinct titan. It was there, among crags fingered by dry winds, that half a dozen riders came upon her. They wore cloaks the color of dusk, and bore sigils she had only seen in her father's library. Black swords on white crescents, crossed spears wreathed in morning stars. They might have passed as brigands, except their steel shone like fashioned by master smiths of Quhora. One rode ahead, helm under arm, violet eyes narrowing as he studied her blade. Lady Lyanna Stark. A statement, not a question. I am Sir Arthur Dayne of the Kingsguard. Her heart turned over. She bowed from horseback. Hoofstones crunched. A prince sends us, Dayne said. Not a king. Then I fear no cage. He smiled, a sad curve of lips. You fear your own heart more, I think. Come. Dawn must greet dawn. At his nod, the others formed a crescent, escorting her toward the red rock fortress glimpsed beyond. The Tower of Joy, so named by Rhaegar in songs few men heard. Seven-sided as a sept yet built for war, it stabbed the sky like a lonely blade. The tower's great hall was narrow, its banners salvaged from a dozen ancient houses, faded into anonymity. A harp rested on a stone dais beside a marble basin filled with water, clear enough to mirror the clouds. Before it stood Rhaegar Targaryen. His silver-gold hair was unbound, falling past shoulders clad in simple bleached leather. No crown crested his brow, no jeweled sword belt hung from his hips. Only a worn cloak, half torn, pinned by a single ruby. Her eyes went to that ruby. It glimmered like spilled heart's blood. Lyanna. He spoke her name, as though tasting it after fasting. Then he bowed, low, courtly, almost absurd in that barren hall, and when he straightened, she saw shadows cupped beneath his eyes, as though he had not slept since the tourney at Harrenhal. I received your letter, she said. And you read it. You speak of dirges and dragons dying. Yet rumors name you heir who rides to seize the throne from your father. Rumor travels blind. He stepped closer until his breath wove into hers. Eris has set wildfire under the city, barrels sealed beneath sept and holdfast. He says he will burn traitors and faithful alike, should Robert Baratheon or any Stark raise banners against him. I would spare King's Landing, Lyanna. I would spare the realm my father's madness. Yet alone I cannot. She remembered flickers of Harrenhal. Rhaegar dismounting in the final tilt to crown her queen of love and beauty. Brandon's fury. Robert's drunken boasts that night. The music afterwards, when she had slipped from the feast into the moonlit godswood and found Rhaegar by the weirwood. Fingers stroking harp strings as though plucking starlight. You crowned me once, she murmured. Men said it was fancy, some tourney pageant. I crowned you because prophecy led me to you, he replied, the words tumbling out like dammed water. Not prophecy writ by crones drooling over fires. Prophecy I saw in dragon dreams. A wolf maid bearing winter's steel, standing before a broken throne while a city of ghosts knelt. I did not understand then. Now I do. Veptun, you speak riddles, my prince. I ask you to end a dynasty, mine, and to preserve its spark within your blood, not my father's line. She stared, pulse drumming in her ears. End his line, yet preserve it? Contradiction collided with the thud of thunder in distant hills. If Aerys burns the city, he went on, the realm fractures. Lannister, Tyrell, Martell, they will carve what remains. Robert will rage, Stark banners will bleed. Winter will fill the south, long before snows fall. I must strike first. But Targaryen blood alone cannot quell the storm. The people fear my name now. They will need a Stark. Ice to temper fire. That burn hand. Need, she whispered. Or will accept. He lifted the single ruby from his cloak and pressed it into her palm. This was one of many set into my breastplate. The rest I left upon the ford of the Trident in a dream that has not yet come to pass. You are no pawn, Lyanna. I would have you wield the blade that slays the dragon. I would have you wear the crown only long enough to hand it to the realm reborn. She felt heat in the gem despite the hall's chill. In her mind, thunder cracked, showing Winterfell ablaze, Brandon swinging by the neck before the Red Keep, Ned on a pyre built of white weirwood. Fear swallowed her. What would you have me do, she asked. Rhaegar pointed to the basin. Its water lay dark as obsidian. Look. Reluctant. She stepped forward. Reflection met reflection. Her face shadowed by raven hair, his face hovering above like a ghostly crown. Then water rippled. Scenes bloomed, cobbled streets shimmering under wildfire green. Children screaming, gold-mantled Lannister guards butchering aldermen, Aerys laughing in flame-lit gloom. Lyanna gasped. A vision, not mere reflection. Magic wove through the water's skin like silk. He touched the surface. Images shattered into cold dark again. This is tomorrow if we fail. She turned, sword-calloused fingers clutching the ruby, and found her voice steadier than she felt. And if we succeed? I will denounce my claim, declare the throne void. Call a council with great lords and small folk both. You will speak for the North and the Riverlands. We will forge a charter limiting crowns for all time. And then, together, we shall vanish. Zetun? Vanish. To raise the child of ice and fire, where no throne may ever reach. The words struck like hammer and anvil. Child? Hers? The basins seemed to tilt. Her breath caught. She thought of Robert Baratheon's booming laugh and sudden jealous anger, of Ned's steady hand on her bridle that day at White Harbor. She thought of her own heart, yearning for wind and distant paths. And she thought of a child born of winter and dragonflame. Untethered by crown or prophecy, could such a child break a wheel forged in Valyria? Lyanna Stark closed her eyes and felt two pulses. Her own and the ruby's. When she opened them, something vast and cold settled behind her ribcage, like a weirwood root twining around a frozen heart. If we do this, she said, there will be no turning back. Once we cross swords with destiny, he answered. Return is a myth. She sheathed her worn blade and extended her hand. Rhaegar's fingers closed around hers. No vow was spoken, yet the stones of the Tower of Joy seemed to vibrate with their accord. Sir Arthur Dayne entered then, kneeling before them. Behind him came Ashara, cloak whipping in the wind that chased through hall doors. Others of Rhaegar's hidden fellowship followed. Soldiers of no house, maesters gone rogue, even a septa whose eyes burned with quiet fire. It was not an army. It was a spark waiting for tinder. That night, beneath a sky of wheeling stars, Lyanna pressed the ruby to her breast. She knelt in a circle of basalt torches while Rhaegar spoke words older than the Seven, older than old Valyria. Words of Anithi and Ashai and lost Royne. Flame spooled into mist, mist into silver strands that wrapped her wrists, binding her to a fate unseen yet felt. When dawn breached violet ridges, she rose feeling lighter, though the air smelled of snow. Ser Arthur placed a parcel wrapped in doeskin into her arms. In it lay a sword unlike any she had seen, pale as morning, veined with rivulets of gold. It drank light rather than reflecting it. Forged from dragonbone and northern star metal, he said with reverence. Dawn reborn for a queen of winter. Lyanna drew it. The blade whispered like pages turning in a forgotten book. She felt its weight singing up her arm, promising endings and beginnings both. She named it Winter's Promise. Plans unfolded like a chessboard overturned. Letters flew north on raven wings. None from her hand, yet all bearing words she had shaped. Secret entreaties to houses disillusioned by Mad King or eager for a realm reset. Lord Hoster Tully, half crippled by gout, would feign illness and pull river lords home to River Run, stalling southern summons. Lady Barbary Dustin would ride banners to Moat Cailin under pretense of protecting the neck, thus blocking any Lannister thrust. In Dorne, Princess Elia lay dying. Yet her brother Oberyn would soon ride north with silent sandship sails, billowing on desert nights. The Red Viper come to strike reason's fang into folly. Lyanna's role first was silence. Vanish, let rumor of abduction kindle Robert's wrath. Lure Aerys to misdeeds that would peel loyalists away. The North would roar only when the dragon exposed his throat. This part galled her, playing damsel when she was conspirator. But Rhaegar argued truth would ring louder for being delayed. They stayed 3 weeks in the tower. 3 weeks in which she let him teach her Valyrian epics, and she taught him the sword's northern stance, feet wide, hips low. He moved like water, she like wind. Together, they shaped a dance no bard had yet witnessed. Nights, she lay awake, tracing constellations he named, Arion's flame, Syrax's cry, and wondered which star would watch their child someday. But outside those walls, the realm quickened toward fire. Ravens brought tidings. Lord Jon Arryn refused the royal summons demanding Ned and Robert be delivered to King's Landing. Aerys declared their houses traitors. Loyal Lord John Connington swept to arrest Robert at Storm's End and missed by an hour. Robert fled into the Rainwood, rallying Stormlanders who loved his thunderous laugh. Ned slipped the neck and mustered at White Harbor. Stannis Baratheon maintained siege at Storm's End, proving iron harder than oak, while Connington's reach waned. Targaryen loyalists found themselves answered with siege lines, not obeisances. Lyanna yearned to ride northward, reveal herself, knit brothers' fury to her own. But Rhaegar restrained her. Timing. We need Aerys to step beyond pardon. And step he did. On the 28th day after Jon Arryn's defiance, the Mad King ordered Rickard and Brandon Stark brought south on promise of trial by combat. Combat never came. Wildfire did. News reached the tower in broken shards. Rickard roasted in his armor, Brandon strangled by his own desperation. Tywin Lannister encamped outside the city, but refusing allegiance. Lyanna felt her heart ice crack, yet tears would not flow. Instead, she took Winter's Promise and hacked at a practice post until splinters carpeted the yard, until her hands bled ruby beads. Rhaegar watched from the archway, eyes hollow. He said only, "Now the dragon's shadow is long enough." He sent riders that night, Dain, and went to King's Landing with forged orders sealing the dungeons. Sir Oswell to ride for Dragonstone to secure Queen Rhaella and young Viserys, for they must be hostages to peace, not tools of hatred. He told Lyanna, "Within 10 days, I will ride to the city gates. But you must ride north tonight, under guard, to Moat Cailin first. Meet Ned. Show him truth before he bloodies his hands against mine." Let him see me stand against our father's killer. B. It felt wrong to part then when daggers balanced on every breath. Yet she obeyed. Dawn shimmered when she left, sword across her back. In the yard, Rhaegar touched her cheek. "Ice and fire," he whispered. "But the song's last note will be yours." She tried to memorize his face. Memory failed beneath tears undone at last. She rode. South of the neck, battle smoke already smudged the horizon. Lyanna's escort, only 2 nights of no sigil, kept silent watch as they threaded marsh paths known only to frog-eaters. At Greywater Watch, Lord Howland Reed greeted her with widening eyes. He said nothing but knelt, for years ago she had dragged him from bullies at Harrenhal and fed him meat pies by the campfire. He gave her passage across causeways and whispered, "Your brother's camp stands 20 leagues north upon the King's Road. Spears thick as reeds." She left the escort behind with Reed's men and rode alone. Moonrise found her galloping under leafless birches, winter's promise gleaming. Wind carried drumbeats of an army, restless to march. Columns of men stretched across fields, fires burning like scattered stars. At the camp's heart flew the direwolf banner, frayed by spring storms. Lyanna dismounted outside the command tent. Guards stared, swords half drawn at this stranger clad in riding leathers and silvered mail until she pushed back her hood. Gasps swept. One guard, Benjen, her younger brother scarcely a man, dropped his helm and wept openly. "Lya," he croaked. She walked past him into lamplit canvas. Ned turned at once. Lines aged him 10 years in 3 weeks. Grief had carved hollows below his proud cheekbones. When his eyes met hers, life surged back, raw and anguished. "Lya, by the gods, Robert told me." She caught him as legs buckled. He clutched her shoulders, staring like man who sees a ghost. "Father," he rasped. She nodded, pain tightening throat. He closed eyes, steadying breath, then opened them. Steel resolve. "Where have you been?" "Plotting an end to this war before it at last begins," she said. Voice gentle iron. "Hear me." She told him of the tower, the vision, the wildfire beneath King's Landing, the allegiance pledged between Wolfmaid and Dragon Prince. Ned listened without interruption, yet jaw tightened when she spoke of unborn child. At the end, he paced, silent. "Robert will not accept this," he said finally. "He wants Rhaegar's head, nothing less. Robert wants a world where love is simple. It never was. I will speak to him." "No." Ned faced her, duty radiating like heat. "He loves you. Seeing you with Rhaegar would break him. And rage yields only ruin. Rage or wildfire. Choose." She drew Winter's promise. Lamplight slid along its pale edge like dawn over snow. "This blade will end a dynasty that lost its worth the day Aerys torched our father. Let Rhaegar offer crown and life both. Let me cut them free." Ned stared at the sword and saw in it something beyond steel. Slowly he nodded, though sorrow dulled his eyes. "I will stand with you. But Robert, we shall tell him the truth once the realm stands upon new ground. Not before." She sheathed the sword. "Can you trust that?" He swallowed. "I must." And then he drew her into fierce embrace, muttering wolf words of pack and home. But outside this circle of siblings, campfires whispered of rumors unhinged. A scout ran through Rainsvale at dawn to report. "The Dragon Prince comes. 500 men, banners furled, riding for the trident." Robert called council, eyes blazing bright as stormlight. When Ned brought Lyanna forth, tents emptied in hush. The sight of her, alive after abduction tales, sent shockwaves of relief, then confusion as she stood unbound, unafraid. Robert strode forward, black hair plastered to brow by drizzle. He cupped her cheeks with calloused hands, searching her face. "He hurt you?" "No," she said. "Robert, listen." He looked past her at Ned, blue eyes narrowing. "Why is my betrothed girded in steel? Why do you clutch a dragon's jewel?" His gaze dropped to the ruby at her throat. "What game is this, Ned?" "It is no game," she said, slipping free of Robert's grip. "I come as herald. Rhaegar marches to parley. He means to end his father's reign, not defend it. Robert barked a laugh that held no mirth. Parley? End Aerys? By the Seven, he is Aerys' son. Blood begets blood. No. Blood can atone? She felt camp eyes on her. Northerners, Stormlanders, Riverlords, all expecting damsel pleadings or fearful tears. Instead, she drew Winter's promise. Gasps rippled. "See this blade," she said, voice carrying beyond Rain. "Forged of dragon bone and star metal. Rhaegar placed it in my hands so I might cut his flesh from history's scroll if he fails his vow. He fears his father's wildfire as we do. He will kneel to the realm's judgment." Robert's gaze fixed on the pale sword. Rain hissed off its edge. Anger warred with desire, confusion with memory of songs sung to win her heart. "And you believe him?" he asked softly, dangerously. "I do," she answered. "Then he's bewitched you." Robert's words spat like sparks. "I will kill him, Lya. I swore it when he took you. He did not take me." Silence swallowed drumbeat Rain. Robert's jaw clenched. "You came willingly?" "Yes." Around them soldiers shifted uneasily. Ned stepped forward, but Robert's raised hand stopped him. "Willingly?" Robert repeated, voice low as thunder at a mountain's root. "Tell me, Lyanna, do you love him?" Love? What shape was love, now twisted by prophecy and grief? She thought of Rhaegar's haunted eyes, the child dream of ice and fire, the vision of blackened streets if they failed. She thought of Robert's laughter, strong arms, but also his blunt certainty. Slowly she answered, "I love the realm more than either man, Robert. And the realm burns." He recoiled. Pain flared raw across his features. "Then gods forgive you, my flower. For I cannot." He turned, roaring for his hammer. War banners snapped up like angry serpents. In that moment, Lyanna knew words had failed. Only steel would speak now. She exchanged glance with Ned, plan raveling. Yet fate seldom bowed to plan. She tugged Winter's promise free, raised it high where dawn's first pale flame brushed the blade. Ice seizing morning. "Any man who rides to battle before parley," she shouted, "rides against the North's honor." Murmurs spread. Northerners lowered spears, uncertain. Robert whirled on Ned. "Call off your sister, else Storm's End and Winterfell stand opposed." Ned's gaze flicked between them. Rain soaked his hair. At last he spoke, voice quiet but carrying. "Robert, old friend, I will not betray my blood. We parley, or Winterfell marches home to bury our dead and leaves you to fight dragons alone." "Nuspamine." Robert's nostrils flared. Pride and love warred like twin stags. Finally he spat. "1 hour's parley. Then gods take the hindmost." They met upon the Trident's ford where shallow water lapped mud banks the color of rust. Rhaegar arrived clad in black armor polished mirror bright. But the rubies that had once gilded the breastplate were gone. Their sockets left empty save one crimson stone at the center. He carried no lance, only a pale torch-like standard. The three-headed dragon hung upside down, a sign of house in mourning for itself. Across the ford Robert came on foot, warhammer slung, Ned by his side. Lyanna rode between the two parties, Winter's promise angled down to show peace. Soldiers lined either bank, bows half drawn, hearts at gallop. When the two men stood facing, rain ceased as though clouds wished to eavesdrop. Robert's voice echoed, "Prince Rhaegar, you are accused of theft, of bride and life and peace. What say you?" "Nebuanatuart." "I say I stole nothing," Rhaegar responded. "For Lyanna Stark was never property. I say I offer my life for my father's crimes, my crown for the realm's peace, my blood to seal it." He knelt, armor clanking, in the river shallows. Mock swallowed his knees, and he drew a slender dagger, placed its hilt toward Robert. Robert hesitated. "What is this farce?" "Justice," Rhaegar said. "Take the blade. Slay me here. Yet heed the words I carry. Wildfire lies beneath the Red Keep. Slaying me solves nothing unless someone prevents Aerys from lighting his pyres. Dainawal. Robert's knuckles whitened on hammer shaft. Ned stepped, as if to reach for the dagger, but Robert raised a hand. "Tell me, dragon, would you burn for your father's sin?" "I would burn to keep him from it," Rhaegar said. "I would die here, if by doing so, you sheath your vengeance and march with me, instead to seize the city, before he ignites it." Lyanna watched Robert's broad shoulders shake with pent rage. He looked to her, then to Ned, then back at the kneeling prince. Slowly he bent, took the offered dagger. Steel flashed. Gasps rippled along both banks, but Robert only sliced his palm. Blood dripped into river. "Stand," he growled. Rhaegar rose. Robert extended bloody hand. Rhaegar clasped it, their blood mingling. Lyanna exhaled. Ned closed eyes in silent thanks to old gods. Yet fate was never so kind. A hiss split the hush. Arrow from some nervous bowman, perhaps Lannister, perhaps rogue. It struck Rhaegar's shoulder, glancing off pauldron but slicing flesh. Immediately shouts rose. Sword scraped free. Robert shoved Rhaegar behind him, roaring for ceasefire. Lyanna spurred forward, Winter's promise interposed. But across the ford came a fresh thunder. A host in crimson and gold banners, lion rampant, charging. Tywin Lannister had chosen his hour. In chaos that followed, alliances frayed. Some Northmen loosed at Lannisters, some at Targaryen banners still hidden in tree line. Rain returned in sheets, as though sky wept. Rhaegar wrenched arrow free, blood darkening armor. "Go," Lyanna shouted. "Take the prince to safety." Ned grabbed his arm, pulling him toward river's deeper run. Robert bellowed challenges, hammer rising like storm itself. Lyanna turned Winter's promise on riders who broke lines to cut her down. The sword moved like living ice, severing spear shafts, parrying axes. She fought toward Ned and Rhaegar, urging retreat, but the crush split them. A Lannister knight slammed shield into her flank. She staggered, found balance, riposted with killing thrust. Mud sucked her boots, arrows hissed like angry bees. Through gaps she glimpsed Ned dragging Rhaegar up bank far side, into willows. Then horsemen closed. She carved a corridor of steel, but for each foe felled another pressed. Rain blinded. A mace glanced off her helm. Stars burst behind eyes. She fell to one knee, Winter's promise braced across helm rim. When vision cleared, a young lion knight stood above, sword lifted. She parried, riposte. Cut artery. Too slow to evade second attacker. Blade glanced off her pauldron, biting deep into shoulder joint. Pain flared white. She roared, drove knee into foe's gut, thrust blade through mail. Blood steamed on pale steel. Around her the ford churned with bodies. North fought Lion, Stormlander against Sellsword. Through clash rose Robert's hammer blow, bone-crunching down. The prince's men, small in number, shielded Ned and Rhaegar's retreat, but Lannister reinforcements poured. Lyanna felt strength ebb with each heartbeat draining through shoulder wound. Yet winter wolves never cowered. She planted feet, sword spinning arcs shimmering like aurora. She cut a path toward willows, toward brother, but the press thickened. Sudden shout behind. "Leah!" Benjen, face smeared with mud, hurled dagger that thumped into man poised to cleave her back. She seized Benjen's arm. "Find Ned. Protect the prince. Go." He obeyed, though tears streaked grime. Lyanna wheeled, confronted tall knight in gilded armor, Sir Emery Lorch. Blade to blade they clashed. His strength nearly broke her guard. She feinted, slid blade along his, punched pommel into visor slit. He reeled. She slashed throat, but exertion tore muscle in her wound. Hot blood spurted. Knees weakened. A horn sounded, direwolf's howl. Reinforcements? No. Kraken banners of the Iron Isles riding in, drawn by chance or coin. The ford became slaughterfield. Lyanna stumbled against dead horse, breath ragged. She searched for Winter's promise, still in grip, but heavy as grief. Through veil of rain she glimpsed Ned's shape beyond willows, brothers ringed by Dane's white cloak. They retreated into mist. Relief and despair mingled. Rhaegar saved. Crown perhaps salvaged. Victory uncertain. But she, queen not yet crowned, found legs frozen by loss of blood. Another wave of lions charged. She realized she could not follow Ned. Aerys's wildfire still waited. But prophecy's dirge could still be sung if she wielded her final note here. Turning tides so Ned and Rhaegar reached King's Landing in time. She climbed Boulder Midford, lifted Winter's promise above head. Rain sheeted off blade in silver curtains. She shouted words lost to thunder, but her stance spoke louder. Stark Wolf unbowed. Men rallied to banner of her rage. Northmen and some Stormlanders closed shields around Rock, forming living bulwark. Lyanna called orders. Voice hoarse. Hold line. Push them into current. They obeyed. The ford narrowed. Cavalry lost footing. Lions drowned in blood froth. Time blurred. She fought until arms felt carved from ice, until gash at shoulder throbbed numb. Maces dented mail. Arrows tore cloak. She gave pain to the river, letting water carry it away. Finally Lannisters broke, fleeing up slope. Horns signaled retreat. Robert's hammer smashed last lion helm. Then he stood gasping, rain rinsing gore. He looked to the boulder, but Lyanna was gone, collapsed in riverbank reeds. Robert splashed toward her, throwing Warhammer aside. He knelt, cradled her head upon his knee. Blood bubbled at corner of her mouth. Stay, he pleaded, voice cracked. Stay, my heart's promise. She touched his beard. Promise me. Robert, she whispered. Echo of another plea still unborn. Protect them. Her gaze drifted toward smoke where Ned and Rhaegar had vanished. Robert shook head, tears mingling with rain. I will. I swear. Just stay. But frost crept from her wound, stealing warmth. She pressed Ruby into his palm. The last of Rhaegar's gems. And the fire, before it spreads. Her chest shuddered, breath ceased. Rain fell. Robert roared grief that shook trees. The next morn birds wheeled over a ford red as sunset. Robert ordered pyres for friend and foe alike, but Lyanna he would bear north in embalmed wagon under Stark banner. He wept as they sealed her in cedar beneath blue winter roses gathered from riverbank, wet with dew like tears of ice. Yet prophecy's wheel still turned. Ned reached King's Landing in 3 days. Rhaegar and Dane beside him. Wildfire barrels were found and doused. Aerys, betrayed by pyromancers fearful of doom, was seized in throne room by the prince he had cursed to die. The Mad King's last vision was of his son kneeling to a wolf-clad woman who was not there. A council convened in Great Septi, and Rhaegar presented crown to the realm, citing treason of blood and fire. He named Eddard Stark Protector, until charter forged. Robert arrived 10 days later, bearing Lyanna's casket. Grief carved hollows in his cheeks, but vengeance's fire had banked to ember. He looked upon Rhaegar with eyes dulled by loss. Only Ned's steady hand upon his shoulder kept hammer from rising. And there, before lords and small folk, Rhaegar spoke. Lyanna Stark died a queen without crown, defending the realm against lions who would feast on its corpse. I stand unthroned by her blade and her heart. Let the realm honor her with peace, or dishonor her with more graves. Now? Silence held while lords weighed vengeance versus fatigue. Then Prince Oberyn stepped forward, knelt before Lyanna's cedar bier, and set down a red viper, carved of jade. House after house followed. Karstark wolf idols, Tully trout brooches, even a Lannister helm, stripped of gold plate, placed by Sir Jaime, who had turned his sword on madness that day. A cairn of tokens grew, outshining any crown. The charter came. A council of 7 great electors, Stark, Arryn, Baratheon, Martell, Tyrell Greyjoy Lannister. Choosing future rulers by vote bound to terms. No one house would grip the realm for generations. Rhaegar would serve as regent only long enough to see charter ratified. Robert accepted Lord Paramountcy of the Stormlands, refusing election. Ned returned north as warden. In spring's first thaw, a child was born at River Run. Lyanna's son, Eddard named him Jaehaerys Brandon. J for short. Ice eyes with glints of amethyst. Rhaegar held him once, then slipped away west where boat waited, never to be seen again. Some say he sailed to Asshai, bearing harp and broken crown, to sing dirges under stranger stars. Others claim he found solace in the Summer Isles, raising girls who danced like flames. Truth became legend. Lyanna Stark was buried beneath Winterfell's crypts, not as princess or queen but as the wolf who ended dragons. Winter's promise lay across her stone knees. Visitors swear the blade still gleams though torches dim, and that on icy nights a woman's laughter echoes in the dark. Free, fierce, forever riding winds that knew no walls. But beyond crypt and crown, a child of ice and fire grew under Ned's watch. J. Stark, Dragon Wolf, played in Godswood, chasing blue petals that drifted from a carved marble vase. And the realm, for a time, forgot the taste of wildfire. Yet someone always remembers. In Braavos, whispers speak of faceless men carrying rubies. In Old Town, archmaesters puzzle over prophecies half-fulfilled. The Song of Ice and Fire is long, and every dirge is but a single verse. And in Winterfell's Godswood, ravens gather each spring, as though waiting for a queen who woke the dawn. For the wheel may pause, but it never truly stops. It needs only one breath, perhaps the cry of a child born of winter and flame, to set it turning again. For now, though, snow falls soft upon Winterfell's roofs, and in the silence between flakes, Lyanna's story lingers, a hush before the next song. Ka. The bells of King's Landing had not tolled for months, and in that silence, the city felt unmoored, suspended between fear and hope. Eris's ashes had been carted to Dragonstone, and interred in the storm-shattered crypts beside queens whose names were now little more than chipped letters on sea salt-eaten stone. Rhaegar Targaryen, no longer a prince, refused a state funeral for his father. Instead, he ordered a quiet midnight rite. 7 hooded septons, a single torch, and the hush of waves against black cliffs. Those who attended, Arthur Dayne, Oswell Went, Jaime Lannister in his white cloak stained with soot, said the wind howled so fiercely it seemed the dead king's soul clawed at the air, searching for flames to ignite once more. Yet no spark took. Dawn broke cold and colorless over Dragonstone, and with it a new calendar, the first day of the Charter era. Across the realm, ravens carried word of the Elector Assembly, summoned to Winterfell in midsummer, where the Charter would be proclaimed upon the Heart Tree. The choice of Winterfell puzzled Southrons. Septons grumbled that a holy sept would have suited the ceremony better, and the Lannisters sniffed that northern alehouses were too crude for world-shaping events. But Ned Stark insisted. The North had paid the highest price, and Lyanna Shade deserved witness. Preparations began in earnest. Carpenters raised pavilions around Godswood paths. Masons shaped a dais of weirwood and pale marble on ground, sanctified by old gods and new. From Wintertown's low eaves fluttered banners of every color. Green Seahorse of House Valyrian, Fiery Son of Martell, Golden Rose of Tyrell, Trident of Tully, Grey Kraken, Red Sunburst and Three-Headed Dragon, turned upside down in morning black. The direwolf, broad-jawed and silver-eyed, flew highest among them, edges stiff with frost even on summer dawns. Ned walked the snowy courtyard outside the great hall each sunrise, turning weighty matters over in his mind. Every Ravencall brought a fresh tangle. Border skirmishes between Tarth and Massey's Hook, a grain tax riot in Old Town, rumors that Queen Rhaella on Dragonstone sought sanctuary in Lys along with the boy Viserys. Ned penned answers patient as winter itself, though worry wrote deeper creases beside his eyes. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Rhaegar worked in secret to dismantle his family's empire, freeing Dragonfang galleys from royal service, pledging jewels to repay crown debts, persuading Storm's End's master armorer to melt the remaining crowns of Aegon's line into coin that would seed new granaries across war-scarred riverlands. The would-be king unmaking his own throne. Small Wonder Lord squinted suspiciously at letters sealed with his sigil. Barely a fortnight after the Trident, Robert Baratheon departed King's Landing in grim silence, Hammer laid across gold and blue saddlebags like a relic nailed to memory. He escorted Lyanna's cedar coffin north with guards who bore torch marks on their cheeks, symbols of oaths to shield her body even from ghosts. At every village knot of folk gathered, small children clutching painted wolf stones, bent septas muttering prayers, blacksmiths who removed sooty caps and bowed heads. Some whispered, "The Wolf Queen," as the wagon rattled by. Others wept to see Robert's once merry face grown gaunt, cheeks scoured by wind and heartbreak. He spoke little. The first words anyone heard from him lay 3 nights north of Maidenpool, shared with Ned beneath a leafless ash. "She died for us all," Robert said, staring past the fire. "And I nearly killed her dream the moment it left her lips." Ned poured ale into 2 wooden cups. "You carried her from the ford. You shielded her body when arrows still flew." "Aye." Robert's knuckles whitened around the cup. "Yet I would trade my seat, my lands, my name itself, to hear her laugh once more, to hear her call me Oathbreak for smashing some tavern stool." He drank deeply, wiped foam. "I will honor the charter. I swore it upon her blood." Ned set a hand on his friend's shoulder. "She believed in you, Robert. Believe in that." The grim lines on Robert's brow eased a fraction. "I will try." The burial in Winterfell's crypt came at dusk. The air smelled of damp moss and ancient stone. Ned walked first, torch high, leading 6 silent pallbearers. Benjen Robert, Jory Castle, Sir Roderick, harried Maester Whaleys, and Branwen Reed of the Neck, her reed cloak spattered with river mud. Behind them strode Rhaegar, traveling incognito, in a rough gray cloak with the hood drawn low. Only Ned, Benjen, and Maester Wallace knew the truth of that tall, quiet mourner who carried no sigil. If Robert noticed, he kept it buried behind reddened eyes. The procession wound past tombs of stone-eyed kings in the north, wolf statues curled above their knuckles, swords rust-edged beneath paws. At Lyanna's chosen crypt, the stonemasons had carved a wolf queen like none before. Helm thrown back to reveal wind-tangled hair, a blade of pale stone across her knees. No crown, only the ruby at her throat, etched in garnet so dark it seemed cut from frozen blood. Ned murmured the ancient words. "Here lies Lyanna of House Stark, who bought tomorrow with her today." The torch guttered, sparks floating up like embered snow. Robert laid a single blue winter rose upon the stone chest, petals so vivid it hurt the eyes. Even this far beneath the earth, the petals seemed rimed by frost. Then he pressed his lips to cold marble, turned away before tears could fall. When the others departed, Ned lingered. Rhaegar stood beside him, hood still shadowing his face. "She would have wished to speak with you again," Ned said. Voice hushed, lest it echo among bones. "I feel her in the stone," Rhaegar whispered. "The North holds memory with greater faith than men do." Ned placed a gloved hand on the prince's shoulder. "Your path now is perilous. Not all the lords will accept your penance. I ask no acceptance." Rhaegar's breath made mist. "Only that the charter outlive us both." "Then ride east at dawn," Ned urged. "Sail for Braavos as planned. Gather those minds who'll codify the council's powers. Send me drafts through trusted channels. I'll argue them into northern hearts." Rhaegar nodded. "And the boy?" "He is safe at River Run with Catelyn," Ned said. "Her father dotes on him already. My own child will come soon, God's willing. Jay shall have siblings of Winter and River Stone." Rhaegar's smile flickered like a candle in wind. Then he knelt before Lyanna's effigy, laid a harp string coiled in silver across the stone blade. "For every song I failed to finish," he murmured. "Sleep, my love." Torches dimmed as they left the crypt. The heavy iron gate groaned shut, and darkness swallowed the wolf who ended dragons. Spring reached the neck in cautious steps that year. Sun-warmed cattails and frogs croaked louder than in seasons past, as though celebrating new accord. Yet Maester Luwin, traveling with reed boats to deliver Ned's letters, cautioned. Even in peace, men plot. His boatman told of sellswards skirting the stepstones, scattering after finding no buyers in Essos. Of Mirish crossbowmasters sailing west with suspicious cargoes. Perhaps forged documents, perhaps casks of wildfire not yet accounted for. In Braavos, Rhaegar adopted the alias of Sir Rhys Blackwater, a wandering knight turned scholar. He took lodgings in a house of purple shutters near the moon pool, where feral cats prowled along the marble balustrade. By night, he played the harp in dim wine halls, thin silver notes drifting amid spice smoke. By day he met with Sea Lords' scribes and the red-inked lawyers of the Iron Bank to debate charters carved in dragonbone tablets, retrieved from Valyria's smoking shores. A claim that might have been rumor if not for the scrap of scorched bone Rhaegar mailed secretly to Ned, etched with sigils older than Oldtown. Even empires born of fire once bound kings to law, his note said. Let us do the same without dragons. But not everyone welcomed a Targaryen abroad. One mist-shrouded evening, as Rhaegar crossed the green-lit bridges of the Sinner's Steps, a dagger flashed from swirling fog. Sir Arthur Dayne, hidden as a boatman leaning on a pole, intercepted with his oar haft. Steel rang on wood. The attacker vanished into mist, leaving only a broken blade tip pierced in the planks. On the fragment glimmered a circle of tears. Poison. Dayne pocketed the shard, mood dark. Faceless, he muttered. Rhaegar only nodded, eyes distant. Assassins would come. They must not reach Winterfell, where the Elector assembly loomed. News of the charter convocation rippled like warming tide across Westeros. Each Elector house faced dilemmas. At Riverrun, Hoster Tully fought gout and nostalgia in equal measure. He had pinned his hopes on a great alliance marriage. Catelyn to Brandon, Lysa to Robert, Edmure to some golden Lannister girl. Now Brandon lay burnt bone. Lysa slept fitfully after losing her child in King's Landing chaos. Cat tended baby Jay with fierce devotion and spoke of duty over all. The charter might elevate Tully's voice, yet Hoster feared power diluted across electors would invite endless deadlock. Still, Cat's resolve tamed his worries. She wrote Ned daily, consulting him on feeding schedules, teething salves, the right maester to trust. Jay has your sister's eyes, she added, and your quiet watchfulness. Ned tucked each letter into the leather pouch at his belt. In Highgarden, Mace Tyrell preened at the thought of seats on High Council, chosen by merit of harvest yields and roads maintained. He imagined parading ledgers before lords who barely counted beyond their own coffers. Yet his mother, the redoubtable Lady Olenna, warned, "The higher you climb, the sharper the wind. See to it, your petals don't freeze." She dispatched clever Loras to squire for Lord Renly Baratheon, forging ties that might anchor Tyrell fortunes should storm winds shift. Sun-baked Dorne simmered with grief and vengeance all at once. Within the Water Gardens, Oberyn Martell trained spear thrusts with daughters grown lithe and lethal. Elia, once frail as a broken bird, had rallied after fever. She walked courtyards leaning on a carved cane, eyes alight with renewed purpose, to raise Aegon and Rhaenys in a realm unfettered by her father-in-law's madness. Letters from Rhaegar, coded in passages of epic poetry, filled her days with silent joy. Yet even Elia grappled with guilt, her survival owed to Lyanna's sacrifice, a debt no Martell heart took lightly. Above the spear tower flapped twin banners. Sun's spear beside Direwolf, a rare honor. Dornish folk whispered that sand itself mourned the fallen Wolf Queen. Desert roses bloomed scarlet that spring, their petals veined blue at the edges. The Lannisters brooded. Casterly Rock's golden halls echoed with clashing tempers. Lord Tywin sequestered himself in the armor gallery, pacing among gleaming suits worn by conquering ancestors. The Elector Assembly threatened to curtail his grip. Worse still, rumors painted his line as architects of the Tower ambush at the Trident. Jaime returned wearing stains of regret few could read, except his sister. Cersei cornered him on the Lion's Mouth balcony, voice low and venom sweet. "You knelt before that wolf's carcass," she hissed. "Now the realm crowns her child and calls us murderers. Our father built empire through coin and steel. You would trade it for poetic oaths." "Noun." Jaime's jaw tightened. "I helped save King's Landing from wildfire. For a Targaryen whelp. For a wolf girl who dared steal your glory." Jaime turned away. "Honor outlasts gold." "Honor?" Cersei spat. The charter will shackle us, twin. We must break the chains before they close. Tywin's spies soon located Selzward's, nursing grudges in Tyrosh. He sent chests of coin eastward, whispering of contracts once paid by Mad King pyromancers now unpaid. In the same shadowed letters, he offered the faceless men a ransom of rubies for the head of one harpist in Braavos. Gold, like water, found cracks. At Winterfell, the first electors arrived with banners snapping. The Tyrell procession came in wagons laden with citrus, honey and barrels of arbor gold, an offering to sweeten northern throats. Lord Paxter Redwine called the warm wine, summer in a cup, and drank 4 before midday. The Dornish followed, sans steeds' hooves, muffled with felt to spare them chill injury. Oberyn swished his crimson cape and winked at shy washer girls. Behind him, Elia, bundled in a gray cloak, gazed at Frost with wonder. "Snow falls softer than sand," she murmured, catching flakes on palm. Greyjoy longships appeared last, black sails looming through river mist. Balon Greyjoy strode ashore, wearing a cloak stitched from drowned kraken hides, eyes hooded like gulls beneath cliffs. He claimed he sailed north, only to observe this land-born coronation of parchment. Yet the coin he threw to Wintertown, children gleamed uncannily gold, doubloons minted in Lannisport years ago. Benjen Stark tucked that away in his thoughts. The assembly convened in Winterfell's great hall, hearthfires roaring beneath woven banners. 7 high-backed chairs stood on the dais, each carved from native wood. Pine for the north, weirwood for the vale, oak for the stormlands, hawthorn for the reach, yew for the westerlands, cedar for the iron isles, and bloodwood streaked with orange veins for Dorne. At the center, an empty seat of black hickory awaited Blackwater emissaries. The voice of Sir Rhys and his scribe. Ned opened proceedings with quiet gravity, reading Lyanna's final letter, her hand steady even on the eve of battle. If tomorrow must bleed, let it bleed for a dawn eternal. The hall fell still. Robert bowed his head. Jaime touched fingers to sword pommel in silent salute. Debate unfolded like long northern twilight, slow to fade, lingering hues of argument across hours. Mace Tyrell extolled the advantages of grain quotas set by council vote. Balon Greyjoy scoffed. "Your wheat may fatten maester bellies, but ironborn grow hardy on salt and ale. Will you tax the sea?" Paxter Redwine proposed trade levies scaled by fleet tonnage. Garland Tyrell suggested road funds collected annually from each house. Oberyn countered with sand road exemptions for caravans bearing healing herbs vital to winter supply. Cersei, speaking for Tywin, demanded a permanent chair of oversight by Westland's coinmasters, lest corruption seep through cracks of good intention. Her gaze flicking at Mace's belly. Through it all Ned listened, steering argument back to common purpose when tempers frayed. He quoted his father, "The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives," until the phrase became refrain for compromise. If one electing house restricted its duty, all might suffer. Robert sat among his Stormland deputies wordlessly until Balon Greyjoy sneered at Wolf and Stag playing petty king Feast of Fools. Robert rose, eyes blazing. Ned braced for hammer, but instead Robert recited the number of skiffs sunk under Greyjoy raids in the fighting's chaos. 24, carrying northern refugees. "A fool counts only the gold he steals," Robert finished. Balon grimaced, but fell silent. Night cloaked the hall before parchment crisp from Braavos arrived, scented faintly of sea and ink. Cerys's courier, a shy Tyroshi girl with silver nose ring, placed the cylinder before Ned, bowed, and slipped away. Ned broke the seal. Within lay the final clauses hammered out by Rhaegar and Ironbank jurists. They addressed power transition. Any elector council could depose a sitting protector of the realm by unanimous vote, broken only by a public tally before Sept or Hearttree. Term limits: 5 years. Safeguards: prohibition on private armies exceeding 2,000 men per house unless war formally declared by majority. A final article, number 12, commanded hush until Ned spoke it aloud. He did. Article 12. The first protector shall be Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell. lasting 2 turns maximum, with Robert Baratheon named Marshal of the Realm by unanimous acclamation. The hall erupted in voices. Robert shot to his feet. "No," he barked. "I never sought crown or office. I swore only to keep memory of Lyanna inviolate." Ned raised palm. "The charter requires each office to hold equal peers. The Protector cannot command armies. That charge sits with Marshal. Marshal cannot levy taxes. That sits with Master of Coin. Each of us wields only a blade's width of authority." Balon Greyjoy snorted. "What of fleets? I see no Lord Admiral seat." Robert, recovering from shock, muttered, "Greyjoy above waves but under law." Oberyn laughed. Even Cersei's mouth twitched. The electors reconsidered. Tyrell scribes measured risk, found Stark stewardship preferable to Lannister hegemony. Aelia whispered to Oberyn. He nodded, then addressed assembly. "Dorne supports Article 12. Tyrell seconded, in booming voice. Balon objected until Mace Tyrell quietly offered to underwrite rebuilding of Lordsport docks burned in the rebellion. Trade corridors benefited all. Balon grumbled, but a Kraken knows value of coin. The vote passed, though not without tension. At dawn following, Robert cornered Ned atop battlements overlooking ice-glazed ponds. "You trap me with honors," he said, voice raw from sleepless negotiation. "I hand you the warhammer in truth," Ned replied. "Marshal is what you were born to be. I've no taste for forging armies. I'd rather till fields." Robert's snort steamed the air. "Your tilling weeds out half the realm's vices. Very well. Marshal I am." Then he gripped Ned's forearm. "But when Lyanna's boy comes of age and this realm still stands, I will lay the hammer down for good." Ned smiled. "I will hold you to that." Not every corner of Westeros bowed to the Assembly's wisdom. On a storm-tossed night, lining the cliffs of Land's End, a figure climbed slick stairs to a lighthouse shack. Inside, candles guttered around bundles of parchment. There sat Lord Ricker, gaunt after famine, and Sir Varys, the master of whispers whose web had outlived the Mad King, though Rhaegar's new council forbade his presence in King's Landing. Varys spread a map showing Essos ports dotted with black ink. Mercenary camps swelling under surplus sellswords cast adrift by the peace of Winterfell. "Discontent is oil," Varys murmured. "A ark will come." Lord Ricker skimmed letters complaining of grain tithes, ship levies, charter ridiculousness. "Who dares light the match?" "Whoever profits when flames consume electors," Varys answered. "Tywin hoards sparks. Balon hides them in salt caves. But the truest ember lies in Korth." He tapped the map. Dragon dreams never die. Far away, beyond the Jade Gates, a silver-haired girl played in palace gardens. Her brother Viserys, lean and feverish, spun tales of iron thrones, stolen by wolves and false princes. "One day," he promised, "we will sail home and burn their wooden parchment crowns." The girl, barely 5, plucked red blossoms and wove crowns of her own. Behind her gentle eyes something ancient stirred, something Lyanna's blade had only put to sleep, not slain. 3 years slipped by. Children grew, some in sunshine, some in shadow. At River Run, Jay toddled among rosebushes, scattering sparrows, calling Ned Papa whenever he visited. Catelyn bore a son, Robb, strong-necked and russet-haired. The 2 boys clambered rocks together. Jay's laugh bright as chimes. Robb's a barking puppy shout. Maester Luwin noted how Robb favored swords carved from reeds, while Jay lingered at riverside, watching sunlight shiver on water. In Winterfell, Cersei's twin sons with Jaime, kept secret, but rumored fiercely. Caught tongues wagging, yet no scandal stuck amid Charter's distractions. Jaime served on provisional guard, honing discipline among city watches scattered by upheaval. Cersei wrote cunning letters to east and west, crafting alliances unseen. Robert traveled roads inspecting musters and granaries, hammer seldom at his belt now. He drank heavily at inns, but he laughed again sometimes. Cracked laughter but sincere. On cold nights he spoke to Ned of ghosts. "I love her still. Yet I see she was never mine to keep, only to shield for a time." Ned answered, "Some loves are waystones, marking where we must turn." Each year at midwinter, Marshal and Protector together visited Lyanna's crypt, placing winter roses beside her stone blade. The realm's shoulders squared after those pilgrimages, as though the dead queen's memory braced living spines. Yet the sea churned with rumor. Ironborn captains refused new harbor taxes, claiming the charter's tonnage quotas meddled with rights of tideblood. Balon Greyjoy, restless and cold-eyed, dispatched longships to collect overdue tribute from lightly garrisoned western ports. Lannisport merchants howled. Tywin demanded redress and counsel. Ned urged diplomacy. Robert sharpened his hammer. A raven arrived at dawn, lengthening into spring of Year 3. Harlaw raiders burned a northern fishing village near Seaguard, taking captives for thrall markets. Among them a black-bearded fisherman shouted Ned Stark's name as flames consumed his hut. Word reached Winterfell before midday. Ned strode to the council hearth where Balon's token squid sat carved from driftwood. He tapped the squid's damp eye. "Send for Marshal Baratheon." Robert came. Ned read the report. Robert's expression hardened like river ice. "This ends now." The council voted. Tyrells agreed to supply grain for fleets. Martells offered desert archers. Arryn's riders scouted coast. Only Lannisters, still nursing grievances, abstained. Ned dispatched Benjen with an embassy, offering Balon clemency if he surrendered raiders and paid recompense. Balon's reply arrived tied to a finger bone. Ships launched from Gulltown, Driftmark, and Blackwater Bay. Robert stood on the prow of Heron's Vengeance, wind whipping his hair, hammer strapped like thunder to his back. At his side, Sir Davos Seaworth, the smuggler knight, promoted to fleet quartermaster, squinted at gray horizon. "Shades of the rebellion," Davos remarked. "But this time we sail for justice, not vengeance." Robert grunted. Justice or vengeance matters not to drowned men. Then he turned to the quarterdeck where a young page adjusted oversized gauntlets. "Jay," Robert said gently, "back to quarters. Battles are no place for pups." Jay Stark Targaryen, now 4, pouted but obeyed. His guardian for this voyage, Sir Barristan Selmy, guided him below, murmuring tales of heroes who healed realms, not shattered them. The Iron Islands braced for war, but Balon had prepared. Wildfire stolen from hidden caches beneath King's Landing, now sealed in kegs, stacked inside Pike sea caves. One spark would scorch a salt fleet at anchor. His newfound allies, Sell-sail captains from Tyrosh, swore oath to scatter wildfire barrels across invading ships. On eve of fleet's arrival, a raven bearing scarlet ribbon alighted on Robert's flagship. Ned's cipher warned, "Wildfire reeks in Pike's caves. Beware green shadows." Robert ordered reconnaissance. Davos led 3 black sailboats under moonlight, slipping into Pike's labyrinthine coves. They found barrels rimed in salt, marked with 3-headed dragon, the Mad King's caches lost in chaos. Davos returned breathless. Robert convened his captains. "No assault at dawn," he declared. "We draw them out." Dawn came anyway, bright over steel-gray waves. Balon, seeing fleet hold distance, unleashed longships. Reeving horns echoed. But Robert had ordered rowboats to slip behind an islet north of Pike, where caves opened like toothy maws. Within them, Arthur Dayne Davos and a dozen chosen men rowed, torches removed to avoid sparks. They carried sealed clay pots of milk of the poppy laced with nightshade, sleeping draught strong enough to fell oxen. They poured it over wildfire kegs, neutralizing resin. Then they spiked casks with seawater, mixing sediment into volatile green. The substance lost potency, hissing and sputtering into harmless sludge. Meanwhile, at sea, Robert feigned disorder. Flagship drifting, sails reefed. Bait. Balon's longships charged. Robert waited until currents pushed foes past hidden reef lines. Then his war galleys unfurled surprise canvas, moving crosswind to slam iron-spiked rams into Kraken hulls. Stormlanders hurled casks of lard that burst on decks, turning planks slick. Dornish archers ignited pitch-dipped arrows, yet not wildfire. Only man-made flame to burn sails. Panic spread. Ironborn captains tried to withdraw, but tides had turned. Within 2 hours, the Kraken fleet lay in fractured ruin across foaming sea. On shore, Davos gave the all-clear. Robert landed with Vanguard as storm clouds rolled. Balon retreated to the sea tower, cursing betrayed gods. Ziga began, short and fierce. Tyrell engineers engineered catapults that lobbed barrels packed not with fire, but with copper coins bearing Lyanna's visage, minted in secret by Master of Coin Bronn, to pay soldiers but also to remind Pike who ended dragons. Metallic hail clanged across courtyards. Ironborn spied Queen Wolf face and faltered in resolve. Balon surrendered before moonrise. Robert stripped him of lordship but, at Ned's counsel, spared his life on condition the Iron Isles join the charter without special exemption. Balon's son, Theon, a boy of 9, was taken as ward to Winterfell. Hostage for peace, though Ned preferred the word ward. Theon stared across deck at Jay Stark. Awe and fear mingling. The realm exhaled. But whispers brewed that Robert's mercy signaled weakness, that Ned's diplomacy frayed edges of rightful judgment. Tywin's letters became frostbitten politeness. Cersei's visits to court grew infrequent. Her twin sons sparred in Casterly yards, golden hair flashing like blades under sun. Year 5. Jay Stark turned 7 under Godswood boughs smothered in snow blossoms. Ned gifted him a dagger carved from weirwood, unsharpened but etched with runes of both old gods and Valyrian glyphs. The boy traced symbols, lips moving in curiosity. "What language is this?" he asked. "A blend like yourself," Ned smiled. "Ice runes for caution, fire script for courage. Wisdom comes from honoring both." Jay nodded solemnly, eyes reflecting leaf shadow. Yet nights of late he woke screaming, dreams of green fire rushing through streets. A woman cloaked in ash calling his name. Maester Luwin soothed him. Septa Kasana murmured prayers. Ned consulted ravens to Braavos. Rhaegar, now deep in charter drafts, wrote back. "Dragon dreams haunt blood and never fade. Teach him stillness. He must channel dreamfire, never drown in it." Ned worried. Prophecy had cost Lyanna everything. He would not let it devour her son. At council, Robert proposed forming the Order of the Silent Torch, elite guardians trained to detect wildfire caches, traveling realm to secure and defuse them. Pyromancers Guild protested. Tywin quietly funded them. Robert overruled. Each elector pledged men or coin except Lannister, whose envoys cited budgetary strain. The seeds of rift deepened. That winter, Tywin moved forces into the Golden Tooth, ostensibly to quell bandits. Jaime, now commander of Charter Guard in King's Landing, balked. He confronted his father in the rock's shadowed forge, where molten gold ran like rivers. "You risk war for pride," Jaime accused. Tywin smiths pounded helms shaped like roaring lions. Sparks flew. "Pride builds legacies," Tywin replied. "Charter stifles them. Lyanna died for that charter." Tywin's hammer paused. He regarded his son with pale green eyes hard as orichalcum. The girl died chasing a lighter chain. She forgot wolves starve without prey. Then he gestured at a sword newly forged, reddish steel. Valyrian blades hold edge by folding iron upon itself. So too realms. Pressure yields strength. One day, when the charter's links snap under self-righteous weight, lions will roar again. Jaime left in silence. In the courtyard he found Cersei, cloak lined with golden mink. She touched his cheek, read fear there. "Father shapes crowns of different metal," she whispered. "We will not be lesser for it." Year 6 dawned with auguries of comet tails flaming across dawn sky. A red streak like the wound dripping from Lyanna's marble throat. Septons proclaimed blessing for the Charter's 6th anniversary. Witches in Kingswood muttered of blood tokens. Jay Stark, now 8, stood beside Ned on battlements, hair whipped by spring gale. He pointed. "Is it the dragon's breath, uncle?" "Perhaps," Ned answered. "Perhaps only the sky reminding us that fire still roams above." Jay clutched weirwood dagger. I fear the fire. Fear can guide if you heed it, Ned said. Your mother feared cages, yet used that fear to free others. Jay turned eyes north where the wall shimmered faintly. Will fire come from there? From anywhere? Ned ruffled his dark silver curls. But I stands guard, and wolves keep watch. Later that night Ned dreamed. Lyanna riding Storm's edge across field of blue roses. She turned, face pale, eyes pools of starlight. The wheel slows, Ned, but the spokes crack. She held out Winter's promise, blade dripping water not blood. Guard the child. Thunder boomed. No hoofbeats. Ned woke heart hammering. Ravens the next week bore dire news. Pirates under banner of Gorgon's grin sacked Old Town Harbor, seizing ships bound for Skagos with grain. Reports described ships painted Lannister red, but bearing no official seal. Tyrell outriders pursued but found only burned husks near Arbor. Council confronted Lannister envoy, who denied involvement. Jaime in King's Landing resigned his post, publicly chastising his father's suspected duplicity. Cersei called him traitor, letters scorched between siblings. Ned saw fractures widening. He summoned Rhaegar from Bravos Dartin. The former prince arrived silently one moonless night, slipping into Winterfell through crypt passages. Gray streaks touched his hair, eyes deeper with years of penance. He met Robert in the great hall's echo, each man older but bound by memory of the woman who saved them both. Robert poured sour red. Lions gnaw at our flanks. He grunted. Would you have hammered them earlier if you'd kept crown? Rhaegar shook head. A crown weighs heavier than hammer. Better it melted. Robert's laugh held no bitterness. Well, dragons and stags may yet shoulder wolves. They planned. Rhaegar proposed a diplomatic summit at Harrenhal, symbol of ruin turned rebirth. Invite Tywin, promise safe passage under both wolf and dragon banners. Offer him post of High Admiral in the reformed Naval Command, granting prestige while binding fleets to charter oversight. Robert doubted Tywin would swallow leash, but Ned agreed with attempt. Peace buys time for Jay and Robb to grow. Rhaegar, however, added secret clause. If Tywin spurned summit, Jaime should be encouraged to claim lordship and bring Westerlands inside charter fold. A subtle coup, but swords rarely sheathed without one last cut. Ned disliked the scheme, yet events forced harsh calculus. Invitations rode out. Oberyn Martell accepted promptly. Harrenhal's ghosts thirst for Dornish wine. Tyrell's too, smelling chance to expand trade. Balon could not refuse lest Ironborn appear isolated. But Tywin delayed reply. Cersei wrote on father's behalf, demanding hostages. Jay Stark and Princess Rhaenys Martell Targaryen, now 9 and spirited. Ned refused. Stalemate. On Midsummer's Eve, Jaime appeared at Winterfell, astride a white courser, golden hair unbound. He kneeled before Ned in hall filled with fireflies. My father plots war that will burn the charter to ash, he said. Give me sanction to travel Harrenhal under Wolf Banner and speak for Westerlands, sans lions roar. Robert spat mead across table. Rhaegar's brows arched. Ned studied Jaime's honest eyes. Eyes haunted by wildfire he once extinguished with blade and betrayal alike. Walk with me, Ned said. They wandered Godswood. Jaime confessed weariness of gold-forged chains, desire to atone. Ned spoke of duty's price. At last he gave condition. Tywin must be presented evidence of wildfire caches neutralized by order of the Silent Torch, proving dragon's fire curbed by charter. Jaime accepted. He left at dawn with sealed letter bearing twin seals of wolf and dragon. 3 weeks later, a raven bearing Lannister colors arrived. Tywin would attend Harrenhal, but only if meeting relocated to the Field of Fire, south of the Blackwater Rush, ground where Aegon first burned Westerosi kings. He means symbol over safety, Rhaegar said. Ned frowned. Open plain suited surprise assaults, yet refusing would turn houses against them. They accepted. The council marched south, arrayed in pageantry. Direwolf marching beside crowned stag, sun spear with gold rose, kraken trailing seaweed banners. Rhaegar rode in gray, harp across back. Jay traveled in coach with Catelyn and young Robb. Sworn shield gray wind sniffing air. Ghost-haunted white direwolf pup followed on silent paws. Jon Snow's yet unnamed companion, brooding boy born of Ned's sister's dream? Not yet born, but Jon existed. In this timeline, Jon is Ned and Catelyn's. Wait, removing confusion. That's a line story. Jon Snow isn't existing maybe. Will not mention. They reached Field of Fire under sweltering sun. Grass hissed like dry parchment. Tents blossomed. At dusk, Tywin's column crested Knoll. Scarlet silk, steel helms glinting. Golden lions roared on standards edged in black. Jaime rode at father's side, face inscrutable. Negotiations convened in a grand pavilion. Tywin entered last, eyes flicking to Rhaegar, to Ned, to Robert's hammer at rest. Silence thickened. Ned spoke first. Lord Tywin, we gather to ensure Winterfell's promise, the realm bound by law, not fear. Tywin's thin smile matched dagger gleam. Promises rust. Gold endures. Rhaegar placed a scroll on table. Charter amendment granting High Admiral to Westerland's fleet, plus tariffs favorable to your minds. Tywin ignored scroll. Return of my grandson captives, he asked, though he had none. A taunt. Ned remained calm. Robert bristled. Jaime studied father, lips parted. Tywin drew pouch, emptied contents. Shards of red stone. Rubies from Rhaegar's lost breastplate. Trident still bleeds, he said. Its blood stains my honor. Rhaegar pale. Ned spoke. We buried the past. Tywin dropped final shard. Larger, shaped like broken heart. On table. Bury deeper. Step aside, and Westerland shall oversee realm until dragon and wolf whelps grow teeth. He surveyed faces. Or... His gauntlet snapped shut. Feel the lion's jaw. From outside pavilion came muffled shouts. Ned's heart lurched. They rushed out. Horizon alight with green tongues. Wildfire. Again. Tywin's agents had rolled barrels into surrounding grass, timed by alchemists to ignite. Yet, Order of Silent Torch defenders were present. Davos led ranger crews stamping flames, dousing with sand. The blaze fought back, but not all barrels burned. Milk of the poppy trick earlier neutralized many. Still, chaos spread among tents. Horses screamed. Robert roared for arms. Jaime seized his father. What have you done? Tywin jerked free. Castles are not won with parchment. Jaime's face twisted. He drew sword, lion's tooth, held it to Tywin's throat. Silence froze hot air. Stand down, son, Tywin said, voice flat. No. Jaime's eyes glistened. No more wildfire. Around them, green ghosts flickered. Rhaegar stepped forward, hand raised. Jaime, he said gently, do not stain yourself again. Jaime's sword lowered. An inch. Tywin's hand flicked impossibly fast, dagger hidden in sleeve slicing upward. Jaime gasped. Blood blossomed along jaw. Before Tywin could strike again, a white blur leapt. Robb's wolf-gray wind. Actually Robb's companion carved earlier. The direwolf pup, now half-grown, lunged, fangs closing on Tywin's wrist. Dagger fell. Tywin staggered back, shock in eyes. Robert's hammer swung, but Ned's shout halted blow. Take him alive, Ned ordered. Guards converged. Tywin, bleeding, glared. Jaime sank to knees, clutching wound, but alive. Wildfire fires doused as night deepened. In medical tents, maesters stitched Jaime. Jay, watching flames reflect on buckets of water, whispered to Robb, "Fire obeys fear when given room." Robb nodded, though not understanding. In Dawn's pale hush, the Elector Council judged Tywin. Faced with attempted mass murder, majority voted removal of Lannister vote, seizure of Casterly Rock's treasury to fund rebuilding of burned farmlands. Jaime, upon recovering, abdicated claim to join Order of the Silent Torch. Cersei, furious, fled Rock with twin sons, swearing vengeance. The Charter had survived its greatest test. Yet scars remained. Western coffers stripped, wildfire panic rekindled. Robert drank heavily that night, staring at Hammerhead. Rhaegar knelt beside Ned outside pavilion. The realm's wounds keep reopening, Rhaegar whispered. How many sutures before the flesh fails? As many as it takes, Ned answered. Lyanna mended one breach. We must mend the rest. They clasped forearms. Year 8. Winter proved mild, yet dreams turned colder. Jay, now 10, trained in both Ravenfeather strikes taught by Arthur Dayne and quiet weirwood meditations with Ned. He sensed distant fires. One evening under Hearttree he asked, "Uncle, why do some call me Prince? I am no dragon. I am wolf." Ned knelt, choosing words. Blood names matter less than deeds. A true king serves, not rules. Jay pondered. Then maybe I'll be a smith, he said, surprising Ned. A smith shapes broken shards. At King's Landing, the Charter's Palace, Copper Hall. Rose where burned warehouses once stood, funded by seized Lannister gold. Its columns carved with intertwined wolf and rose, kraken and spear, stag and sun died out. No dragons. Rhaegar insisted his house emblem rest only inside council chamber, as reminder of power surrendered. Cersei's exiled faction stirred trouble in Shield Islands, paying pirates to harass Tyrell shipments. But the Marshal's fleet, now under Admiral Paxter Redwine, repelled raids. Without Lannister coin, conspirators dwindled. Across the narrow sea, however, the silver-haired child Daenerys reached 13. She danced at a Corthine envoy feast, eyes reflecting candles like liquid amethyst. Viserys, plotting still, met with warlocks who spoke of dragons sleeping beneath ash. They told him of rubies lost at a ford, keys to waking flame. He wrote to agents in Braavos, "Find stones that bleed and bring them across the sea." Those agents, the same who once hunted Rhaegar, traced rubies to Casterly coffers now emptied. To market stalls in Gulltown turned to charms and ornaments. One gem surfaced in River Run's rookery, gift from Robert to Cat for Jay. Warlock spies plotted theft, whispering that a child of ice and fire sleeping under northern snows must never unite with dragon across sea. Faceless men accepted a contract. 2 lives, Jay Stark and Jay Harris's ruby. Payment: 3 dragon eggs rumored in Jade sea markets. The many-faced god hungered for balance. On the 12th day of Frostfall, a silent figure entered Winterfell, disguised as Potboy. Maester Luwin found him polishing candelabra outside Jay's chambers. Something in the boy's eyes, stillness too old, made Luwin pause. He fetched Ned, who approached with quiet steps. When Jay opened door, dagger flashed, coated in manticore venom. But Grey Wind, grown full direwolf and ever vigilant, barreled from shadows, slammed assassin into wall. Poison blade glanced off fur, nicking paw. Direwolf howl. Ned's sword left scabbard as instincts honed, since Trident awoke. He parried second strike, disarmed attacker, pinned him with shoulder into tapestry of kings of winter. Assassin's mask fell. A smooth face painted with coal dust to disguise age. No boy but woman. Eyes hollow, unshed tears trailing. Ned asked only once, "Who sent you?" She whispered, "Those who fear dragons reborn." Then bit a cyanide capsule sewn in cheek. She spasmed, died. Jay stared, shock wide. Ned hugged him tight. "Your mother's courage flows in you," he whispered. "But so do her enemies." The council convened emergency session. Robert wanted war upon Braavos. Rhaegar counseled caution. Oberyn demanded protective guard for Jay. Balon Greyjoy offered to host Laden Pike. Laughter met that. Ned decided Jay would journey to White Harbor, where Maester Wyman manderly oversaw new naval academy. There Jay could learn shipcraft, forging skill he desired, and protective circle of Order of the Silent Torch accompanied. Jaime, Arthur Dayne, 60 sworn shields. The boy left Winterfell under pale dawn, gripping weirwood dagger and a new oddity, small hammer of castle-forged steel gifted by Robert. When words fail, build with this. As Jay's convoy disappeared down King's Road, Ned walked battlements with Rhaegar. "He will be safe," Rhaegar said. For now, Ned gazed at clouds. Peace built on charred bones invites scavengers. Then we keep vigilant, brother. Rhaegar used the word easily now. We shape world where wolves and dragons guard each other. Ned nodded. Lyanna dreamed of 5 hours peace. We've given her 8 years. Let's aim for 80. Ned and Dibbe. They clasped hands. Wind carried faint scent of snow, and beneath it, promise of spring. Beyond seas, still storm-racked, Daenerys dreamed of blue roses growing from cracks in red walls. A woman's laughter echoed. Free. Fierce. She woke trembling, whispering a name she'd never heard, Lyanna. On Dragonstone, Queen Rhaella, gray but resolute, received a raven from her son. She read of children, carving futures unshackled by iron chairs. She smiled, then signed parchment, authorizing donation of Dragonstone's ancient library to the Charter Council. Scrolls on wildfire containment. Valyrian law, dragon lore. Past feeding present. History's wheel creaked but did not yet turn anew. In Braavos, a harpist in a wine hall plucked a tune of winter roses and silent torches, song drifting across canals to mingle with gull cries. Listeners paused, breaths held, hearts remembering a queen who never wore a crown yet ruled a realm of conscience. As moon-silvered water, the harpist sang final verse, voice scarcely above whisper. When ice can temper flame at last, and broken swords are bent to plows, then wolves will guide the dawn to pass, and queens will reign without their brows. Gnon. Entity. Cats prowled the shadows, eyes glowing. The song faded, but its echo slipped along alleyways, beneath doors, into dreams of sailors, bound for Westeros. Dreams of charters, of direwolves, of dragons sleeping under snowlit skies. So the realm stood, precarious yet determined, as children of ice and fire grew amidst hopes and hatreds both. And somewhere in Winterfell's crypt, wind hissed through stone mouths, whispering that the tale was not ended, only paused, awaiting the next breath to stir embers into living flame once more. Ka. Summer in the north lingered like a held breath. The snows had not yet begun their creeping descent, and all the fields around Winterfell shimmered with green and gold under the high sun. The rivers ran fast and deep, and their waters caught the light like liquid glass. The air was sweet with clover, and bees hummed through the tall grass, drunk on the bounty. At the edge of the Godswood, Jay Stark crouched with Robb and Sansa, fashioning a chain of daisies for their youngest sister, Arya, who chased a pair of wolf pups through the bluebells. From somewhere near the lake came Bran's clear, musical laugh. Jay lifted his head and watched him, half jealous of how easily the boy could make even the ravens caw back in delight. He was not truly a Stark, not in the old blood sense. Not in the way that Robb was, or Arya, or Bran. Jay carried the ice and fire in his veins, the knowledge always just beneath the surface, never far from waking. Even here, on a golden day that felt spun out of song and story, he was never allowed to forget. The last attempt on his life had failed, thanks to Grey Wind's vigilance and Ned's swift sword, but it had left its mark. At night he dreamed of green fire and women's voices whispering in tongues he could not understand. Sometimes he woke with words in his mouth he had never learned. He was 10 now, nearly 11, tall for his age, with his mother's eyes and a shock of silver among the black in his hair. Most days he wore it tied back, the better to see his own hands, broad and clever, always turning something over, always at work. Ned had made him a promise once. He would be no prince in gilded halls, no dragon in exile. He would be a smith if that was what he wanted. So Jay apprenticed at the forge and studied with the scribes, learned his runes and his sums, and the rhythms of hammer and bellows, steel and flame. Gendry Waters, the royal blacksmith's apprentice, was visiting from King's Landing. The two had become fast friends, and Jay delighted in showing him the secrets of the northern steel. Today, though, he was only a brother among siblings, threading daisies and listening to Sansa invent stories about princesses and wolves and summer snows. "Tell us a story, Jay," Sansa begged, eyes bright. He grinned. All right, but only if Arya sits still for once. Arya, dirt-smeared and wild-haired, tumbled into the circle of grass, her wolves panting at her heels. I'm listening, she said, breathless. But if it's about dragons again, I'm going to steal your shoes. Jay leaned back on his elbows, looking up at the blue sky. Once upon a time, there was a queen who wore no crown. That's your mother, Sansa interrupted. Jay nodded, unbothered. She was clever and quick, and she knew that the world needed peace more than thrones. So she made a pact with a prince, and together they broke a great wheel that had crushed many people for hundreds of years. And then what? Bran asked, crawling over to listen, face smudged with dirt. Jay smiled. And then she died. And the world changed. Her children and her brothers and her friends tried to keep that peace alive, but there were always those who wanted the old ways, the crowns and swords and endless fighting. No. Boring, Arya declared, though she sidled closer. What about the part where the wolves chase off the lions? He laughed. That part is still being written, Arya. Maybe you'll help write it. The pups nuzzled her hands. Arya beamed. Sansa clapped, delighted, and began stringing another chain of flowers. Jay felt a pang. A bittersweet, familiar thing. He wondered if his mother had felt it, too, the knowledge that nothing could last forever. But for now, the day was warm, and his siblings were laughing, and that was enough. Within Winterfell, Ned Stark moved through the shadows of his home as if each step were weighted with snow. The burden of ruling as protector of the realm did not grow lighter. No matter how often he told himself he was only holding this place until the children grew, the recent attempt on Jay's life had shaken him more than he cared to admit. He had trusted in the walls, in the loyalty of his guards, and the order of the Silent Torch. But in the end it had been luck, and the boy's wolf, that had saved him. The assassin's face haunted him. A woman not much older than Cat, with eyes that held no fear and no mercy. He read the letters from the south every morning over porridge, Catelyn's hand resting on his wrist to steady him. The Lannisters still simmered in their golden den, their pride bruised and their coffers lighter than ever. Tywin remained a prisoner in the dungeons beneath Casterly Rock, refusing food and counsel alike. Cersei was a viper loose in the grass. Her twin sons sent to be fostered at Sunspear under the Martell banner, a calculated attempt at peace, or so she claimed. Rumors ran rampant that she plotted in secret with Sellsword captains, that she had tried to broker marriage between her youngest son and Arya and Martell, that she had sent envoys to Essos to seek out Viserys and Daenerys, to promise support in return for vengeance against the wolf and the stag. Jaime, estranged from his sister, rode the length and breadth of the realm with the Order, sniffing out hidden wildfire and rooting out pockets of Lannister loyalty. He sent reports in his own hand, written in a style that was both blunt and weary. There was no mistaking his loyalty now. I am no lion any longer, he wrote. Let my sword be the Silent Torch. I will answer for my house if I must, and do what good I can before the end. News from the east was more troubling. Ships out of Pentos whispered that Viserys was moving, gathering a following among exiled knights, magisters, and sellswords. The warlocks of Korath were said to have shown him visions in their glass candles. Dragons rising, rubies burning like stars, a queen in the snow. Daenerys, a maiden of 13, was the heart of many tales. A girl who dreamed of the sea and wove blue flowers into her hair. She had written once to the Charter Council, her words delicate and uncertain. I'm Daenerys, last daughter of the storm. I hope for peace, though my brother dreams only of fire. I wish to see Westeros, to know if it is truly as green as the stories say. Ned had replied, formal and cautious, inviting her to visit as a guest under the Charter's protection. She had not answered. But perhaps the greatest trouble came not from across the sea, but from within. Old wounds festered. Tyrells and Mardells quarreled over trade. Greyjoys grumbled that the iron price had been forgotten. In the Riverlands, Blackwood and Bracken feuded as always. The Reach and Dorne skirmished on the border, small folk caught in the middle. Even in the north, wildlings tested the watch, raiding beyond the wall. And the faceless men, unseen, uncatchable, had made it known that their debts were not forgotten. For every failed contract, there was a reckoning. The council was a patchwork now, stitched from need and hope. Rhaegar, grayer and more introspective than ever, wrote from Braavos. Peace is only a lull between storms. Remember that every truce is a line drawn in wet sand. Teach the boy stillness, as we agreed. He is our hope and our burden. Nain. Robert Baratheon, Marshal of the Realm, had not been seen in Winterfell for over a year. He ranged across the south, holding Storm's End and rallying bannermen to the Crown's cause whenever Tyrells or Martells looked too long at each other's borders. The years had worn him. He drank more, laughed less, his massive frame grown heavier with each passing winter. Yet when he returned, he was the same Robert, boisterous and loyal, always ready to tell a story of Lyanna that left Ned quiet for hours after. It was during one of these rare returns that he found Jay in a forge, hammering out a knife blade under the watchful eye of Gendry and Old Mikken. "Careful there, lad," Robert called, squinting at the orange-white steel. "You'll sweat yourself down to nothing before the blade's even drawn." Jay grinned, wiping his brow. "You sound like my uncle. He thinks I should be at the books." Robert rumbled a laugh, deep as a summer storm. "Books are well enough, but a king, or a smith, needs strong arms as much as a sharp mind. Let's see what you've made, eh?" Jay held out the half-finished blade. Robert turned it over in his hands, nodding with approval. "Good weight, good edge. You'll make a fine sword yet." Gendry beamed with pride. "He's better than me, if you ask." "Nonsense," Jay protested. But he blushed with pleasure all the same. Robert tousled the boy's hair. "Keep at it, both of you. The realm will always need men who can make something new." That night, Jay and Robert sat by the fire with Ned and Catelyn. The talk was of old days, of dreams and battles, and the price of peace. "She would be proud of you, Jay," Robert said, voice thick with wine and memory. "Lyanna, I mean. She had more sense than all of us put together." Jay looked into the flames. "I wish I'd known her." "She's here," Ned said quietly. "In you. In all of us." For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire, the hush of the wind outside. Jay felt the weight of their gaze, the hopes and fears of a generation resting on his narrow shoulders. He wondered, as he always did, whether he would be enough. Word arrived from the Wall not a week later. A great host of wildlings had gathered under a new king. Mance Rayder, once a brother of the Night's Watch, now a lord of Freefolk. They had crossed the Frostfangs, uniting clans that had not spoken in years. Jonas Flint, the Stark Castellan of the Gift, sent warnings that villages along the border had vanished in the night. Direwolves were seen in numbers not witnessed since the days of the old kings. Ravens flew south every day, heavy with grim tidings. Ned called a council, summoning his bannermen to Winterfell. Jay watched from the shadows as the lords gathered, faces grim, eyes wary. The threat from beyond the Wall was a knife at the North's back, but the real danger was closer to home, the prospect of southern lords refusing to send aid, of the charter breaking beneath its own weight. Maester Luwin spoke first, his voice low and urgent. "The Night's Watch is undermanned and ill-provisioned. If the wildlings press south, the Wall may fall." "We will ride," Ned said. "The North will answer. I will not see my father's house shamed by inaction." "Nemu." But Lord Manderley, fatter and richer than ever, demurred. "The Watch is a relic, my lord. Perhaps it is time to let the wildlings through, let them taste southern law. The Reach has little love for the North and the Westerlands." Ned silenced him with a look. "The Watch holds the Wall for all Westeros. If it falls, there will be no South, no North, only ruin." Jay wanted to shout, to urge them to action, but he remembered his uncle's words. Stillness. So he waited, and listened, and learned. It was Benjen who saved the day, rising from his place at the end of the table. "I will ride to the Wall myself. The wildlings have never united for long. If we strike hard and fast, we can scatter them before they reach the Gift." The lords grumbled, but Ned nodded. "So be it. We ride at dawn." Jay begged to go with them, But Ned forbade it. "You are the hope of the realm, Jay. If I fall, if Benjen falls, you must remain. The wolves cannot leave the den unguarded." Jay hated the order, but he obeyed. The days that followed were restless. Robb practiced with the guards in the yard, his wolf bounding at his heels. Sansa embroidered with her mother and sang sweet, sad songs to Arya in the evenings. Bran climbed the tallest towers, dreaming of eagles and snow. Jay found himself drawn to the Godswood, to the old heart tree where his mother had once prayed. He knelt in the moss, hands on the rough bark, and tried to find stillness. He closed his eyes and listened to the wind, the rustle of leaves, the distant cries of wolves. In that hush, a memory came to him, not his own, but as vivid as a dream. A woman's voice, fierce and gentle, whispering of duty and choice. He opened his eyes and found himself not in the Godswood, but standing before a wall of ice. The wind howled around him, and beyond the wall he saw a darkness deeper than any night. Something moved within it. A shadow with blue eyes, cold and pitiless. He woke gasping, sweat slick on his brow. He staggered to his feet and ran to the great hall, calling for Maester Luwin. "It was a dream," Luwin soothed. "A bad dream? Nothing more." But Jay shook his head. "It was more than that. There is danger coming. I saw it." Luwin sent a raven to Ned, and another to the wall, warning them of Jay's vision. The Maester kept the boy close after that, watching him with wary eyes, as if he were a fire that might flare out of control. News from the wall arrived 2 weeks later, carried by a ranger near frozen to death. The wildlings had attacked in force, but the Watch, bolstered by Benjen and the Northmen, had held. Mance Rayder had been driven back, his hosts scattered, but not before many villages had been put to the torch. Benjen had been wounded, but would recover. Ned had distinguished himself in battle, wielding Winter's promise with deadly skill. Jay read the letter over and over, relief and guilt warring within him. He should have been there, he thought. He should have fought. But he was not a soldier. Not yet. He was a smith. A boy. The hope of a new world that seemed more fragile every day. When Ned returned, weary and bloodied but alive, Jay ran to him, burying his face in his uncle's cloak. "You did well," Ned murmured, holding him close. "You kept the faith. That is all I can ask." Spring brought new troubles. Cersei Lannister returned to King's Landing with her sons and an army of mercenaries at her back, demanding her place in the council and the return of her father from the dungeons. She brought with her letters from Viserys Targaryen, now styling himself king across the narrow sea, promising alliance and fire in exchange for gold. Rhaegar, summoned from Braavos, arrived in secret. He met with Ned and Robert in the crypts beneath Winterfell, where Lyanna slept. "We must not let the charter fail," Rhaegar said, his voice heavy with years. "If we fall to fighting among ourselves, all that she bought will be lost." Robert snorted. "The charter is a fine thing, but it will not stop a dragon or a lion or a kraken with blood in his eyes." Ned shook his head. "We must hold fast. The realm is tired. Let the people see us united." But Rhaegar only looked at Lyanna's statue. His face haunted. "We are not united. Not truly. There are too many old wounds." The council met in the great hall, lords and ladies crowding the benches. Cersei stood before them, resplendent in Lannister gold, her sons at her side. "I demand justice," she said, her voice ringing. "My father is held without cause. My house is maligned. The wolf and the stag seek to rule alone. But we will not be set aside." Ned answered calmly. "Your father plotted to burn the realm. He must answer for his crimes." Cersei smiled, cold as a winter dawn. "Then let us have a trial. Let the lords of Westeros decide." The lords murmured, some in approval, some in dread. "Very well," Ned said. "Let there be a trial." The days that followed were tense. Evidence was laid before the court. Letters, witnesses, confessions drawn from captured Sellswords. Jaime Lannister testified against his own father, his face hard as stone. Tywin, gaunt and defiant, refused to speak in his own defense. At the end, the lords found him guilty of treason. The sentence was exile, not death, for the charter forbade execution, save in times of war. But Tywin was to live out his days in the farthest reaches of the wall, a guest of the Night's Watch. Cersei left the hall in silence, her sons clutching her hands. She would not forget, nor forgive. The years passed. Jay grew into his strength and skill, forging swords and shields in the Winterfell forge, learning the ways of war and peace at Ned's side. Robb grew bold and sure, the pride of the North. Sansa became a beauty and a scholar, her songs the envy of every court. Arya ran wild through the woods, her wolf at her side. Bran dreamed of eagles and the high places of the world. Robert Baratheon aged into a kind of peace, teaching Jay the hammer and the shield, laughing more, drinking less. Ned remained steadfast, his hair streaked with silver, his eyes sharper than ever. Rhaegar retired to Old Town, where he wrote histories and raised a second family, content at last to let the past rest. The realm was not perfect. There were wars and rumors of wars, Ironborn rebellions, Tyrell intrigues, Martell ambitions, whispers of dragons stirring in the east. But the charter held. The council met, the lords voted, and the people found a measure of peace. Jay, now a man grown, stood one winter evening in the Godswood, looking up at the stars. He felt the weight of his mother's legacy, the hope of the realm resting on his shoulders. He thought of Lyanna, wild, fierce, free, and smiled. He was not a king, nor a dragon, nor even a true Stark. He was only Jay, a smith, a brother, a son of ice and fire. But that, he thought, was enough. And somewhere far away, on the edge of a new world, a girl with silver hair looked west, dreaming of green fields and blue roses, and the stories yet to be written. So the tale lingered, unfinished, as all true tales must. The wheel did not turn, or if it did, it turned slowly, creaking and groaning under the weight of old sins and new hopes. The North endured, the council stood, and the memory of a queen who wore no crown lived on in every breath of wind, every flake of falling snow. In the end, there was only this: the promise of spring, and the quiet courage to wait for it. Ua, Hey, Elmdown. Morning in White Harbor broke pale and bright. The harbor waters burnished by sunlight, banners hanging limp in the absence of wind. The new academy's towers stood sentinel above the city's wharves, and from their high windows, Jay Stark watched gulls wheel and tumble over the glinting sea. He missed Winterfell, the cold air, the solemn quiet, the wolves, but he did not say so. Not even to Maester Luwin or Sir Arthur Dayne, whose patient lessons and long rides had shaped these months at the edge of the North. Here, every day brought new skills and new faces. Young squires from the Manderleys and the Ryswells, visiting septons, smiths with arms blackened by forge work, the salt-stained merchant princes who ruled the docks and eyed the world with hungry ambition. Jay rose before dawn as he always did, slipping from his narrow cot to wash in icy water and dress in plain linen. The lessons of the day stretched before him. First the library, where Maester Theobald, fat and irritable, drilled him in letters and numbers, followed by fencing in the yard. Then afternoons at the docks, where the harbor master taught him the arcane business of ships, draft, ballast, sail, and cargo. His greatest joy, though, was the forge. Gendry had traveled up the King's Road that spring, bringing news from King's Landing and his own tools wrapped in old sailcloth. He and Jay worked side by side in the heat and clangor, shaping daggers and nails, horseshoes and breastplates, always under Micken's sharp eye. Gendry's face, broad and open, split with laughter at the northern ways. He'd never seen so much snow, nor eaten so many pies filled with fish and onion. And the sound of it cheered Jay more than he could admit. The other boys looked at him with awe or suspicion. He was Ned Stark's heir, Lyanna's son. The prince not prince, with hair that shimmered silver at the tips. Some envied him. Some whispered that he was touched by prophecy, that he would be king one day, or perhaps forge a blade greater than any made since Valyria fell. Jay ignored the talk. though at times it grew as sharp as the chill in the winter wind. One morning, as he worked the bellows, Gendry nudged him. "You hear the news?" Jay shook his head, sweat slicking his brow. "From where?" "Essos," Gendry whispered. "Viserys Targaryen's got the Golden Company on his side. They say he's taken 3 towns along the Narrow Sea, and that he's sent letters to every lord in Westeros, promising gold and dragons." "Never." "Seri," Jay set his tongs down. "Dragons? There are no dragons left." "That's what you say," Gendry grinned. "But men will believe anything if it's wrapped in gold." "You worried?" Jay hesitated. He thought of Ned, of Lyanna's tomb, of Rhaegar's distant voice in the council chamber, urging peace and caution. "I'm not worried," he lied, "but I wish I were home." They went back to their work, the clang of the hammer driving the uncertainty away, at least for a time. The Charter Council convened at White Harbor that autumn, a rare thing. Ned Stark arrived with Robb and Sansa, his hair gone white at the temples, his stride slower than Jay remembered. With them came Robert Baratheon, still Marshal of the Realm but stouter than before, his beard streaked with silver. Oberyn Martell arrived by ship, dazzling in orange and gold, and Lady Olenna Tyrell, sharp as ever, traveled from the Reach with her granddaughter Margaery, eyes full of quiet calculation. Even Jaime Lannister appeared, riding north with only a single squire. His days of glory long past, the Order of the Silent Torch his only remaining allegiance. They gathered in the new council chamber, a low, wide room of white marble, and Jay watched from the shadows with the other young pages. The talk was grim. Viserys' campaign in the east, Cersei's scheming in the capital, a surge of piracy along the western coast. Reports arrived of dragon banners in the disputed lands, of faceless men assassinations in Old Town, of riots in Lannisport. The council was more divided than ever, the old alliances fraying as new dangers loomed. Robert took the floor, his voice booming above the others. "Let us smash the usurper and be done with it. I'll ride myself if you'll give me the word." Oberyn grinned, lazy and lethal. "You'll ride to the stepstones? Mind the crabs, my friend." Lady Olenna spoke up. Her words clipped. "If Viserys truly has the Golden Company, he will not stop until he has landed in Westeros. We cannot wait for him to pick his landing." Ned listened, hands folded before him, his eyes never leaving Jay. "If we march east, we leave the north and the riverlands exposed. We must strengthen the coast, build alliances in the east, and send envoys to the Iron Bank." Oberyn rolled his eyes. "Envoys and alliances? Words are wind. Steel and fire are what's needed." Robert slammed his fist on the table. "We can do both. Let us call the banners, but send our best negotiators to Braavos. If Viserys can buy Sellswords, so can we." Jay listened, his heart pounding. He wondered if he would be sent east, if he would see battle before he'd ever drawn real blood. He remembered his mother's lesson, the story she'd told Ned to pass on. Peace first, always, but do not hesitate when war comes. As the council broke for supper, Ned drew Jay aside. "You are to remain here," Ned said softly. "Whatever happens, White Harbor is strong, and you have friends." "I could help," Jay protested, but Ned shook his head. "You help by learning, by waiting. Someday you may have to lead this realm. I would have you do it with wisdom, not anger." Jay bowed his head, frustration and pride warring within him. "Yes, Uncle." Ned squeezed his shoulder. "You make me proud, Jay. Never doubt that." Days passed. The council made its plans, and autumn bled into winter. Jay trained with the squires, learned the ways of wind and sail, read histories of old kings and the fall of Valyria. But the city was restless. Whispers grew of ships from Essos appearing at night, of spies slipping ashore in the guise of traders, of gold changing hands in back rooms. One evening, as Jay sat with Gendry in the forge, a stranger appeared at the door, a woman cloaked in gray, her face shadowed. She carried a letter sealed with a broken wax dragon. Jay stood, wary. "Who are you?" The woman bowed. "I am called Melara. I come from Braavos, with a message for Jay Stark." Gendry's hand drifted to the hammer. What sort of message? She smiled, cold and sad. A warning and an offer. The faceless men have accepted a contract on your life, but there are those in Braavos who would rather see peace prevail. Viserys is not the only Targaryen with friends across the sea. Jay's mouth went dry. Who are you? Once I was no one. Now I am someone. Take this. She pressed the letter into his hand, her fingers ice cold. Read it when you are alone. Do not trust the man in blue. With that, she turned and slipped into the night, vanishing as swiftly as she had come. Jay broke the seal with trembling hands. The letter was written in an elegant, slanting script. To Jay Stark, heir of Lyanna, child of ice and fire. There are forces moving that would see the wheel broken once more. The time is coming when you must choose. Peace or war, the north or the realm, the old gods or the new. Beware the man in blue. Trust your wolf, and remember the lesson of your mother. Do not mistake stillness for inaction. The dragon stirs. The lion hungers. The kraken waits. Be ready. There was no signature. Jay burned the letter in the forge, watching the parchment curl and blacken. He said nothing to Gendry. But that night he kept a dagger under his pillow and slept with Grey Wind curled at the foot of his bed. The next day, the man in blue arrived. He was a merchant, he claimed, from Lys, with news of ships and cargo for Lord Manderley. But when he passed Jay in the courtyard, his eyes lingered a fraction too long, and the wolf's hackles rose. Jay sent word to Sir Arthur Dayne, who ordered the man followed. By dusk, they had uncovered a hidden blade in the man's luggage, a blade coated with a black poison that Maester Theobald could not name. The merchant was arrested, questioned, and confessed under threat of the rack. He was no merchant, but a hired killer from Tyrosh, paid in gold stamped with a crowned dragon. The council met again, furious and frightened. If the faceless men are among us, Ned said grimly, there is nowhere safe. Lady Olenna snorted. No one is ever truly safe, Lord Stark. Not even here. Manwan. Robert was ready to storm east with every man he could muster, but Rhaegar, summoned once more from Old Town, counseled caution. Viserys seeks to provoke us into rashness, Rhaegar said. We must be clever, not only strong. Clever? Robert spat. You've never been clever, Rhaegar, only lucky. Jay watched, silent, as the old wounds surfaced once more. He remembered the letter, the time is coming when you must choose, and wondered if the choice would be his to make. Snow fell early that year, blanketing White Harbor in silence. Ships were trapped in the harbor by ice, and the city huddled close, fires burning bright in every hearth. The council stayed on, unwilling to risk the roads, and Jay found himself at the heart of a siege, if not of enemies, then of worry. He trained harder than ever, sparring with Gendry, riding out with Sir Arthur to patrol the city walls. The people watched him, hopeful and fearful. More than one whispered prayer followed him as he passed. One night, as Jay sat at the window, watching the snow fall, Sansa came to him, her face pale and eyes wide. I had a dream, she whispered. A dragon breathing fire over the city. You stood on the walls, holding a sword of ice, and the flames broke around you. But the dragon turned into a man, and he called your name. Jay shivered. It was only a dream. Dreams can be true, Sansa said, pressing his hand. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise, Jay whispered. But he wondered if it was a promise he could keep. By midwinter, the snows eased, and the first ships from the south arrived with news. Viserys had crossed to Westeros with the Golden Company, landing at Duskendale. Cersei's banners had joined him, and the Lannister gold paid for fresh swords. The Riverlands were in turmoil, some lords rising for the dragon, others holding to the charter. War had come again to Westeros. The council scattered. Robert marched south with the Stormlanders. Oberyn led his spears to meet the Targaryen host, and Lady Olenna returned to Highgarden to ready her own defenses. Rhaegar remained in Old Town, sending ravens daily with counsel and warnings. Ned prepared to ride north with Jay and Sansa, to rally the northern banners. Before they left, Ned called Jay to his study. You are to ride with me, Ned said. But if the city falls, You must take Sansa and the others and flee west. Go to Deepwood Motte or the Rills. The North will endure, even if the world falls apart." Jay bristled. "I can fight." "You can, and you will if it comes to it," Ned said. "But your duty is to survive and to remember." Jay nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Ned looked at him, eyes sharp. "It is a hard thing to live when others die. Harder still to lead when you have known only loss. Your mother knew that. So did Rhaegar." Jay swallowed. "I'll do what's needed." Ned embraced him, hard and fierce. "That is all I ask." The march north was bitter and slow, the roads thick with snow and refugees. At every village, Jay saw the cost of peace and war. The empty fields, the burned barns, the children watching with hungry eyes. Robb rode ahead with the vanguard, Sansa tended the wounded, and Arya scouted with a pack of wolfhounds, her laughter echoing in the woods. At Winterfell, the banners of the North rose high. Manderley, Glover, Reed, Serwyn, Tallhart, Ryswell, and more. The castle filled with voices, the old songs of Winter and Wolf, the promise of safety in a world gone mad. Jay walked the battlements each night, remembering his mother's voice, the lessons of stillness and action. Grey Wind paced beside him, ever watchful. One night, a raven arrived from the wall. Benjen's riding was hurried and blunt. Mance Rayder is on the move again. The wildlings are not alone. There are things in the woods. Dead things, cold things. We need help. Ned called a council of his bannermen. "The North will ride to the wall," he said. "The realm can fight its wars. We will hold the line." Jay stood with Robb and Arya, watching as the lords pledged their swords. "Will you come with us?" Robb asked, voice hopeful. Jay nodded. "Where else would I be?" They rode north 2 days later, the snow falling thick and soft. The silence of the forest broken only by the howling of wolves. At the wall, the watch was battered but unbroken. Benjen greeted them with relief, his face gaunt, his beard rimed with frost. "There are things in the woods," he said. "The others are stirring. We've seen their dead, walking and hunting. The wildlings are desperate. Mance Rayder wants peace, but his people are afraid. Them and all." Ned nodded. "We will hold the wall. We will not let the dead pass." Jay felt a chill deeper than any wind. He remembered Sansa's dream. The dragon in the sky, the sword of ice. He wondered if it was prophecy, or only the shadow of fear. They held the wall that winter, fending off wildlings and whites alike. Jay fought with sword and hammer, side by side with Robb and Arya, the cold burning in his veins. He saw things he would never speak of. Dead men with blue eyes, wolves that fought without fear, fire that burned blue in the snow. When spring came, the dead retreated, the wildlings scattered, and Jay stood atop the wall, looking south. He saw smoke on the horizon. War still raging in the riverlands, cities burning, banners rising and falling. He turned to Ned, who stood at his side. "Will it ever end?" Jay asked. Ned looked at him, weary but unbowed. "Not in our time. But if we hold to what is right, if we remember why we fight, then perhaps the next generation will know peace." Jay nodded. "I will remember." Ned squeezed his shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." War raged for 3 years in the south. Viserys' campaign faltered and failed. Cersei betrayed him for her own advantage. The Golden Company was broken by Tyrell and Martell spears, and the people rose for the Charter, tired of kings and dragons. Rhaegar died at Old Town, an old man at last at peace. Robert retired to Storm's End, his laughter faded, but his loyalty intact. Arya rode to Braavos, seeking her own path. Robb ruled the North with Sansa at his side, wise and strong. Jay returned to Winterfell in the end, not as a prince or a conqueror, but as a smith. He rebuilt the castle walls, forged new swords, taught the next generation the lessons of ice and fire. He kept his mother's memory alive, not in crowns or banners, but in every act of mercy, every moment of stillness, every choice to build instead of break. And so the wheel remained still, or as still as it ever could. The realm healed. Slowly, stubbornly, the wounds of the past, turning to scars, the promise of the future growing with every child, born free of old debts. Jay stood in the Godswood one last time, feeling the wind on his face, the weight of his mother's legacy, and his own choices light as snow. He smiled, and in the hush between heartbeats, he heard her laughter. Wild, fierce, free, and knew that was enough. Okay. The snow was falling hard and fast over Winterfell when Jay Stark returned to his home for the first time in more than a year. He rode through the outer gate, flanked by Robb and a dozen guards, his black and silver cloak powdered with frost, gray wind stalking the shadows behind the horses. Above the archway, the direwolf banners streamed in the wind, frayed but proud. The village was alive despite the storm, stable hands running, children tumbling after dogs, old women bent over stalls in the market square, faces red with cold. Jay dismounted and stood a moment, breathing in the air of home. Even the snow here smelled different, sharper somehow, cleaner than anywhere in the south. He walked the stone yard, Gendry at his side, their boots crunching through a drift that came up past their ankles. "It's worse than Braavos," Gendry grumbled, stamping his feet. Jay grinned. "You wanted to see the north in winter. Not this much north." A young woman came running through the falling snow, face wreathed in a scarf of bright blue wool. Arya, who had only just returned from across the sea, taller and harder than before, her hair cropped short, her eyes bright with mischief and something older. She threw her arms around Jay in a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. "You're home. Robb's been insufferable. Sansa's already planning your welcome supper." "I'd rather a hot bath than a flagon of ale," Jay said, but he smiled, and Arya linked arms with him as if they were children again. Inside the hall, the warmth hit him like a wave. Sansa was there, tall and graceful, her hair shining red gold in the firelight. She greeted Jay with a gentle kiss on his cheek. Bran wheeled in after her, his legs now thin and twisted, but his hands quick as ever, his eyes as sharp and seeing as the ravens that still flocked to him, no matter the season. Robb sat at the high table with his wife, a woman of the Manderless, plump and wise, and always ready with a story or a song. Next to them stood Ned Stark, older now, his hair as white as the snow outside, lines deepened on his face, but his eyes brightened with pride and relief at seeing Jay safe. Catelyn was gone. She had passed the previous spring, the fever coming fast and taking her before the snow could even melt from her grave. The loss hung in the air. Jay felt it, saw it in Sansa's softer tone, in Bran's long silences, in the way Arya spent so much time out in the cold alone. Ned wore his grief as he did his duty, quietly and without complaint. That night, the hall was full. Servants carried in venison pies and honeyed carrots, great platters of trout from the white knife, loaves of brown bread steaming as they were sliced. The wine flowed, the mead even faster. Old Riswell sang, and the Manderleys played pipes and lutes, their music rolling over the crowd like thunder and laughter together. After the meal, as the hall quieted, Ned rose. "My son returns," he said. "Let Winterfell rejoice." His words were few, but the people cheered, and Jay flushed red, caught off guard by the love in their faces. Later, as the fires burned low, Jay found himself at the window in the Lord's Solar, looking out at the falling snow, the ramparts, the black pines beyond. Robb joined him, 2 cups in hand, and passed one over. "It's different now," Robb said. "Everything's changed since the wars. Since the dead rose in the woods. Since you left." Jay nodded. "I saw the world. I fought in the south, and I forged swords on the wall, and I watched men die for gold and promises and pride. But none of it felt like home." "Dome." Robb sipped his wine. "We're all changed. Sansa rules in your stead when you're gone. Arya chases bandits into the Wolfswood. Bran sees things I can't explain, not even to myself. But the North holds. Father holds." Jay drank, and the wine was sweet and strong. He always does. They stood in silence for a while. Outside, the wind howled, the snow drifted higher. Inside, the fire crackled, and the warmth felt like a shield. The next day brought a council meeting. The lords and their banners packed the hall. Manderley and Serwyn, Glover and Ryswell, Reed from the neck, little Mage Mormont bristling in her bear fur cloak. Even the wildlings had sent a representative, Tormund Giantsbane, who grinned at Jay from beneath a beard that now reached to his belt. Ned opened the council with news. Word from the south is grim. Duskendale burns, Viserys has fled, and his sellswords sack the coast. In the Westerlands, Lady Cersei fortifies Lannisport and hires every blade she can find. Tyrells and Martells eye each other across the Dornish marches. The king is dead in King's Landing. Poisoned, they say. Rhaegar's gone. Robert drinks himself to death at Storm's End. Darshantine. There was muttering in the hall, some fearful, some angry. We have peace here, Ned said. But it is a fragile peace. The wheel may not turn as it did, but the world keeps spinning. If the South falls to chaos, it will come for us in time. Lord Manderley spoke up. What do you propose, Lord Stark? We hold the North, Ned said. We open our stores. We aid the Riverlands as we can. We keep the wall, man. We send no men to die in southern wars, but we do not turn our backs to the world. Man. The council debated long and hard. Tormund spoke for the wildlings, demanding that the free folk not be left to starve in the snow. You let us in, Stark. Don't shut us out now. Arya, restless, stood. We are stronger together. The South will always look north and see a prize. We must stand as one, or we'll be picked apart. Jay listened, weighing every word. He knew there would be pressure to march, to intervene, to seize an advantage in the chaos. But his mother's lesson, Ned's steady wisdom, held him. We build, not burn, he said when the voices grew too loud. We keep faith with our people. The rest of the realm will follow our example, or it won't, but we won't lose ourselves to another's war. Ned nodded, satisfied. The lords agreed, and the decision was made. The snows deepened. Winter hit the north hard that year. Crops failed. Whole villages vanished under drifts. Wolves howled in the night, and people huddled close for warmth. Jay threw himself into work, organizing the smiths and masons to repair roofs, dig wells, keep the bread ovens burning day and night. He and Gendry forged plows and axes, then swords, when the rumors of bandits on the King's Road grew too frequent to ignore. Arya led hunting parties into the woods, her wolf ghost at her side, and brought back hares and venison for the kitchens. Sansa and Bran coordinated relief for the sick and the old, setting up clinics in the castle for the healers and the wise women. Every day, Jay visited the forge, the barracks, the storerooms, walking the halls with a quiet word for everyone he met. When there was need, he filled it. When there was anger, he listened. When there was despair, he reminded them. We are the North. We endure. His fame grew, not for glory in battle, but for the simple, stubborn work of keeping his people alive. When a fever swept through the castle, Jay nursed the sick himself, staying up through the nights with Arya and Sansa, boiling water, fetching firewood, mopping brows, holding hands. Bran dreamed of ravens and snow, and sometimes Jay would find him on the roof at dawn, watching the sun rise over a world turned silver. Sometimes, when all was quiet, Jay walked to crypts alone. He knelt before Lyanna's tomb, ran his fingers over the cold stone of her sword, and whispered the news of the day. We're holding on, he'd say. We're not giving up. You would be proud. And in those moments he thought he felt her presence. A warmth in the cold, a light in the darkness. He drew strength from it and went back to work. The first sign of spring came with a raven. The message was short and the seal was unfamiliar. A blue flower, not seen since the days of Harrenhal. To Jay Stark, Lord of Winterfell, we come in peace, seeking alliance. The South is in ruins, the old order broken. Meet us at the inn at the crossroads. Daddy. Jay brought the letter to Ned and the council. Sansa recognized the seal. It's Daenerys, she said, her voice soft. They say she has survived. She and her brother are the last of the Targaryens. The lords murmured, uneasy. Ned weighed the letter for a long time, then nodded. We have always answered a call for peace. Go. but take care." So Jay set out with Arya and a small escort. Gendry, Grey Wind, a dozen guards. They rode hard through the spring thaw, the rivers swollen and the air full of bird call and scent of new grass. At the inn, they found Daenerys waiting. She was older than the stories, her silver hair bound in braids, her face lined with hardship and loss. Her brother was gone, lost in the wars of the South. She came alone, with only 2 sworn shields and a silent child at her side. Jay greeted her with respect. "My lady." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes the color of the summer sea. "You are Lyanna's son." He nodded. "And Ned Stark's, in all but blood." They spoke through the night, sharing food and drink by the fire. Daenerys spoke of her travels, of the cities of Essos, of wars won and lost. She had learned much, she said. But the lesson she held closest was this: peace cannot be won by dragons, only by the will of the people. Jay agreed. The North will stand with any who seek peace, but we will not fight to put a Targaryen on the throne. Those days are done. Daenerys smiled. "I don't want the throne. I want a home, a place for my people, a chance to rebuild." They shook hands, and an alliance was made, not of crowns or armies, but of understanding. Jay returned to Winterfell with news of peace in the south. Daenerys had gone to Oldtown, where Sansa and Bran traveled to meet her, working together to rebuild the shattered council. Arya went east again, this time as a knight and envoy, forging new bonds with the free folk and the cities across the sea. In the north, the years rolled on. Children grew, old men died, the snows came and went. Jay ruled as his father had taught him, with patience, kindness, and strength. The north endured. It prospered. One day, Grey Wind passed, old and scarred and tired. Jay buried him beneath the heart tree, and Bran said he dreamed of the wolf running forever through a land of green and gold, never cold again. The world changed, as it always does. The wheel did not break, but it slowed. The council continued. Lords met to debate and argue and laugh. Sansa became known as the Lady of Peace, Arya as the Wolf Knight, Bran as the Watcher. Robb's children played in the Godswood, laughing beneath the ancient branches. Jay grew older. He married a girl from Bear Island, strong and clever, who gave him 3 children, 2 sons, a daughter. He taught them to read, to ride, to fight, and above all, to listen. At last, when the snows were deep again and the night grew long, Jay went to the crypts one final time. He knelt at his mother's tomb, placed a blue rose at her feet, and whispered, "We have kept your promise. We have built, not burned. The North endures." Nenderni-Ra. As he stood, he heard laughter, distant and wild, echoing through the stone halls, a queen's laughter, free at last. He smiled and walked out into the snow. The sun rising over Winterfell, the world knew again. And so, as the seasons turned, the story of Lyanna's son became legend. The North remembered, as it always had, and the lessons of peace and strength carried forward. No king ruled unchallenged, no house stood alone. But the dream of a home without tyranny survived, passed from mother to son, from wolf to child, a quiet flame against the dark. The song was not ended. It never would be. For as long as the North endured, as long as the heart trees whispered and the wolves howled at the moon, there would always be hope. And that, in the end, was enough. In the years that followed the hard winter, the North settled into the rhythms of hard-won peace and silent vigilance, its people shaped by the long memory of war and the even longer patience of snow. The white walls of Winterfell grew weathered but sturdy, repaired again and again by Jay Stark's hand and the steady labor of his kin. The Riverlands, river-born and battered, nursed their wounds and sent barges north, carrying timber and grain as peace offerings. The mists over Moat Cailin rose and fell with the tides, carrying wordless stories, while the Night's Watch watched and waited at the edge of the world, the black line of the wall standing between all the living and the secrets beyond. Jay Stark, Lord of Winterfell in all but name, was a man grown now, broad-shouldered and sure with the hammer, silver threaded through the black of his hair. the memory of fire and ice always in his eyes. He ruled not with a crown, but with patience, listening as his father had, acting when action was required, holding back when restraint would save more than any sword. The North loved him for it. They called him the Quiet Wolf, and the small folk whispered that he was the one who'd inherited Lyanna's restless spirit and Eddard's steady heart, a true child of both. His children, Lyra, fierce as Arya, Edric, clever and dreamy like Bran, and little Cregan, always trailing after the others, ran the halls and yards of Winterfell, their laughter ringing against ancient stone. Jay's wife, Meryn of Bear Island, watched over them all with a bear's protectiveness and a healer's gentle touch. Her long black hair, braided with shells and teeth, was a flag of the wild north. She had become as much a Stark as any born to the name, guiding Jay with her clear eyes and her steady counsel. It was a season of rebuilding. When the ice melted from the lakes, Jay led men and women down to the fields, helping to plant, teaching new hands the patterns of the earth. Gendry returned every spring, bringing with him innovations from the south. A new plow, a design for a better forge, news of what the council in Old Town debated or delayed. Arya came and went, sometimes with ships out of Braavos, sometimes from the mountains with a pack of wildlings and northern rangers, always with stories of distant lands and new alliances. Sansa sent letters and gifts from Old Town, her voice ever the thread binding north and south, her children learning both the faith of the Seven and the old gods of the Weirwoods. Ned's hair turned white as snow, and though he moved slower, his words carried more weight than ever. Bran's legs never healed, but his eyes saw farther than most. In the evenings, Jay found his siblings around the hearth, telling stories or playing at board games while the wind howled outside. These were the golden days, though no one called them that while they were living through them. But peace is not a still thing. In the high passes beyond the wall, the wildlings found evidence of old things stirring. Shadows in the forest, ruins newly uncovered by melting snow, strange tracks in the icy ground. Benjen Stark, oldest now of the Watch's brothers, sent wary ravens south. Not dead things, but something was moving. Some said it was giants, others said children of the forest, others only shrugged and sharpened their axes. Jay read each letter with growing unease. One evening, as the children slept and Meryn dozed beside him, he called Bran and Arya to the solar. "There's unrest beyond the wall," Jay said, voice low. "I've felt it, even in my dreams. Old stories waking. Do you see anything, Bran?" Bran's eyes went distant. "Dreams come in flashes, ice cracking, forests dark with secrets. A horn blowing in the night, not wildling nor watch. But I cannot say what it means." Arya's fingers drummed restlessly on her belt. "I can take a ranging party north. I know the wildling passes, the haunted caves. If something is moving, it'll find it." Jay hesitated. "Not alone." She grinned, wolfish. "Never alone." That spring, Arya rode out with a dozen of Winterfell's best. Rangers, wildlings, a pair of silent sisters who followed her everywhere. They passed the wall at dawn, watched only by Benjen and his silent brothers. Grey Wind's pup, Shadow, born of the old direwolf's last litter, went with her, black as night and twice as cunning. The days that followed were cold and hungry, but Arya had learned to live off the land. She and her party skirted the great lakes and broken towers, moving as the old wolves once had. At a crumbling fort half buried in snow, Arya found what she was looking for. The ground was torn, the trees splintered, old bones unearthed by some great force. Strange runes, cut in ice and stone, marked a path leading deeper into the woods. Her companions grew uneasy, but Arya pressed on. Shadow kept pace, tail low, ears pricked. They found the horn on the third day, ancient, black, carved with spiral sigils. Beside it lay the corpse of a giant, flesh frozen, eyes empty but accusing. No human hand could have done this, Arya thought, kneeling by the horn. "Should we bring it back?" One ranger whispered. Arya shook her head. "We mark its place. Tell Benjen, Tell Jay. But we leave it here. There were powers in the north, best left untouched. They returned to the wall by moonlight, battered but whole. News carried in Arya's own hand. Jay read her report by firelight, weighing the words with dread. If the horn was what old tales claimed, the horn of winter, the breaker of the wall, then peace was only borrowed. He sent ravens to Old Town, to Sansa and the Council, to Daenerys in the Reach, to the lords of the Riverlands and Vale. Be vigilant, unto all. Do not let old fears or ambitions turn us against each other. If the wall is ever broken, it will not be by men alone. Then. Following summer was the best in living memory. The barley grew thick. The cattle fattened on new grass. The children ran barefoot through the fields. Jay's son Edric, 12 and willful, broke his arm falling from a horse and insisted on returning to sword practice before it was healed. Lyra became a terror with bow and arrow, stalking the woods for hare and pheasant with her cousins. Cregan trailed after Arya's youngest son, begging to join the next ranging north. Jay and Meryn made their rounds, traveling from Deepwood Motte to White Harbor, hosting lords and small folk alike, settling disputes with fair words, and, when needed, quiet authority. They rebuilt old villages, planted orchards where fire had burned, even established a new school at Barrowton for the children of nobles and commoners, both. Gendry oversaw the construction of a new smithy at Winterfell, larger than any before, teaching a new generation the skills that had once saved the realm. But beneath all this hope, there was tension, barely perceptible. In the south, rumors grew of new wars. Pirates sacking the Arbor, Tyrell and Martell skirmishes, whispers of Cersei's bastard sons rallying mercenaries in the disputed lands. In the east, Daenerys in voice spoke of a city in Slaver's Bay declaring independence, and fleets of Corthine traders seeking new deals with Westeros. The lords of the Vale grew restless, tired of Old Town's council and eager for a return to their own banners. Sansa wrote regularly, her letters always careful, never quite trusting the birds. There is talk of a new king, she wrote. The South grows impatient. Some wish for the return of the Targaryens, others for a Lannister crown, some for a council of houses to rule. I fear we are growing apart. Nestuzabnin, Jay replied, we are the North. Let them choose their kings and councils. We have endured and will endure whatever comes. But be watchful, sister. There are always those who would trade peace for power. Autumn brought the first signs of trouble. Scouts reported small groups moving through the Gift. Wildlings, yes, but also men in strange cloaks, speaking no language the Watch could name. Benjen sent one party after them, and only one man returned, raving about white-eyed children and voices in the dark. Arya returned to Winterfell in haste, her eyes narrowed and wary. There's unrest beyond the wall, she reported to Jay and Ned. But it's not wildlings. It's something older. Shadows that walk at dusk. The old gods are restless. Bran, listening, looked troubled. Dreams come and go. I see faces in the heart trees, hear voices in the roots. They say, be ready. The council convened in Winterfell. Lords from every house in the north crowded the hall. Robb led the debate, practical as ever. We can fortify the wall, he said. Send extra grain, more rangers. Arya, can you lead another ranging? She nodded, but her eyes flickered to Jay. Something's changing, Robb. I feel it in my bones. Jay sat quiet, listening. When the lords fell to argument, he stood. We will not abandon the wall. But neither will we panic. Prepare stores, reinforce the garrisons, but do not spread fear among the people. We have faced darkness before. We will again. The council broke, the lords dispersing, their nerves soothed, if not satisfied. That night, as Jay stood beneath the heart tree, the wind whispering in the red leaves, Bran joined him. I dreamed you stood on the wall, Bran said, not as a king or a warrior, but as a smith, mending cracks with fire and ice. The wall sang. I don't know what it means. Jay rested his hand on Bran's shoulder. It means we'll do what we must, as we always have. Winter came early that year. Blizzards swept from the shivering sea, closing the roads, trapping villages behind walls of snow. At the wall, the Watch fought daily against storms and hunger, but Jay's preparations kept them fed and equipped. Merrin ran the castle with a will of steel, opening Winterfell's doors to those who came seeking shelter. One night, as the snow fell in silence, Arya returned from the woods with a wildling woman. Tall, red-haired, her skin marked with blue swirls. She brought news from beyond the wall. "The old powers wake," she said in broken common. "Children of the forest walk again. They seek something lost. They say the time is close." Arya nodded. "She speaks true. I saw trees bleeding, stones singing. Something is coming." Nay. Jay sent ravens south again, warning the council, the lords of the Vale, Daenerys in the Reach. Most replies were skeptical. The south had heard too many stories of darkness and winter, too many false alarms. But Sansa's letter was different. "I believe you," she wrote. "Prepare as best you can. I will do the same." When the break came, it was not with armies, but with silence. One night the wall shuddered with a sound like thunder. Rangers on patrol saw the black horned shape, bigger than any mammoth, strike the ice, cracking it along old, invisible seams. White mist poured through the cracks, spilling over the snow. The Watch fired arrows, lit torches, but the thing moved on, vanishing into the night. By dawn, the wall still stood, but a section near the Shadow Tower was fractured. A narrow gap, just wide enough for a single man to pass. Benjen sent word, "We held the gap." No one passed. But this was not the work of wildlings. The wall's magic is failing. Now and Jay rode north with Arya, Gendry, 100 sworn swords, leaving Merrin to guard Winterfell. The journey was hard and cold, but they reached the wall within days, greeted by Benjen's grim face and a company of exhausted brothers. They inspected the crack, a jagged scar in the ice, rimed with frost, humming faintly. Bran arrived, drawn by dreams, and laid his hand against it. "There is something behind this," he whispered. "Not the dead, not the others. Something older. The children of the forest, maybe. Or the gods themselves." "Nander Sameh." Jay knelt beside him, pressing his own hand to the ice. For a moment, the world fell away. He saw darkness, a horn's echo, red leaves falling through blue mist. A face he almost recognized, wild and young, smiling with fierce love. He drew back, shaking. "We mend it," Jay said at last. "We use fire and steel and every bit of magic we know. If it cannot be fixed, we make the gap a fortress." They worked through day and night. Gendry's forges melted and reforged old weapons into bands of steel, driven deep into the ice. Arya's rangers patrolled, bows drawn. Bran sat in trance, his mind searching roots and stones for danger. At last, the crack was bound. It would not hold forever, but for now, it was enough. Winter lingered, hard and stubborn. But slowly, spring returned. Jay, Arya, and the others returned to Winterfell, older and changed. Word came that the children of the forest had been seen in the woods near the neck, speaking with reed men in the marshes. In the south, Daenerys' council finally recognized the danger, sending food and supplies north. Sansa lobbied the lords of the Vale to send their best rangers to man the wall. Jay took his children to the Godswood one morning, teaching them to pray to the old gods, to listen for the whispers in the leaves. "We are the memory of the world," he told them, "and the world remembers." Years passed. Edric went to the wall as a ranger. Lyra sailed east with Arya's fleet. Cregan became the Lord of Deepwood Motte, ruling wisely and well. Gendry stayed on, old and strong, teaching new smiths the craft that had saved a realm. Bran grew silent, his dreams more frequent, his visions farther away. Merrin passed on a spring day. Her family gathered around her. Jay mourned her quietly, burying her beneath the heart tree. His hair was all silver now, his hands calloused and scarred. He ruled quietly, always listening, always building. The North endured. Sometimes in his dreams, Jay saw Lyanna's face, wild and young, laughing as she rode through the snow. Other times he saw the wall, whole and shining in the dawn, the horn silent, the world at peace. When he felt the end coming, Jay called his children and grandchildren to him. He spoke of the past, the wars, the winters, the dangers beyond the wall, the promise of peace. "We are Starks," he said. "We endure, we build, we remember." His last night, he sat by the window as the snow fell, watching the world he had helped make. Children running in the yard, smoke rising from the forges, wolves howling beyond the walls. He smiled, thinking of Lyanna, of Ned, of Meryn, and all those who had come before. Of Arya, Sansa, Robb, Bran, Benjen, Gendry, Daenerys, of a realm that had survived its worst, and kept its hope. He closed his eyes and let the peace of Winterfell enfold him. In the years that followed, the story of Jay Stark was sung in halls from White Harbor to Dorne, from the Wall to Old Town, a tale of peace hard won, of quiet strength, of the North's endurance. The heart tree stood tall, its leaves red against the white snow, and the wolves still ran, fierce and free, across the empty moors. The world turned as it always did, but the wheel did not break. It slowed, it softened, and for a while at least, the people of Westeros lived in peace, guarded by memory, honor, and the lessons of a queen who ended a dynasty, and a son who built something better. The tale did not end. It never truly would. For as long as Winterfell stood and the wolves howled at the moon, the story would continue, one quiet day at a time, snow after snow, spring after spring, hope enduring forever. Gandhi. Jay's passing was quiet, almost as if the ancient stones of Winterfell themselves had known it was coming. The last snows of the year fell softly outside his chamber, the wind humming through the cracks in the glass, as if singing a lullaby. His eldest daughter Lyra kept vigil at his bedside, her hand wrapped around his, her jaw set in the same stubborn line that had marked generations of Starks. Edric was at the wall, riding the northern ridges with his sworn brothers, but a raven had gone to him as soon as Jay's breath grew thin. Cregan had come down from Deepwood Motte, his wild brown hair wind-tangled and damp with sleet, a man grown now, but with the shy, hopeful heart of the boy he'd been. Even Arya was there, come home from distant seas, silver at her temples and scars crisscrossing her knuckles. She watched over Jay's final hours, as she had once watched his first steps in the yard. When the end came, Jay smiled faintly, as if seeing something far away. His last words were a whisper to Lyra. "The pack survives. Never forget." It was over before dawn. The household gathered in the old way. Lyra and Cregan carried him down the cold steps to the crypts, Arya and Bran walking behind. Old friends and new filled the godswood in silent witness. A hush as thick as snow muffled every footstep. The great heart tree loomed overhead, red leaves rustling like the voices of the dead. Lyra placed a blue winter rose atop the stone, one that Bran had grown from cuttings taken years before, a tiny miracle in a world that always seemed too hard for flowers. The people of Winterfell bowed their heads, and as the first sun touched the branches, Arya lifted her face to the sky, letting the pale warmth dry her tears. The North had lost another Stark, but the house still stood, its roots deep as the old gods. That evening, the hall was filled with all those who had called Jay friend or Lord Dort. Maester Arn led the prayer. Robb's children were there, now lords and ladies themselves, their banners standing side by side with Lyra's wolf and bear, the white weirwood and black ironwood of Cregan's house, the crowned raven of Bran's. Even wildling chieftains, gray and hard, came to pay their respects. The music was soft and somber, but as the night wore on and the cups were drained, the songs turned bold, and laughter echoed against the stone once more. For that was Jay's legacy too: peace, endurance, and a joy that would not die. The North in those years was changed, yet changeless, shaped by the passage of decades, but always returning to what had always been. Lyra Stark ruled in her father's place, tall and strong, with the quick step and bold laugh of her Aunt Arya, but a measured patience that was all Jay. Her hair was dark, and her eyes gray, and when she sat in council, few dared question her judgment. She had married a daughter of House Reed, binding the Cranagmen closer to Winterfell than ever before. Their sons were quiet, sharp-eyed, and strange, as comfortable in boats as on horseback, speaking in low voices of marshlight and secrets. Cregan, Lord of Deepwood, ruled the western shore, rebuilding villages swept away by the endless winds and carving new paths into the thick pine and spruce. He had wed a shield maiden from the Skagosi, and their children, quick, fierce, and stubborn, were known for braving the storms at sea, bringing in hauls of cod and whale oil that kept the north fed through every harsh winter. Bran's watch had grown silent and long. He spent days and nights beneath the heart tree, communing with roots and ravens, less a man than a part of the land. When visitors came to seek his counsel, be they lord, outlaw, or orphan, he offered riddles and wisdom in equal measure, and every year at the autumn festival, he walked among the people, blessing the children and the fields. Some whispered that the old god spoke through him, that he was half ghost, half tree, ageless as the hills. His gaze, still sharp, watched everything, from the first snows to the last stars, from Lyra's council to the smallest mouse in the granary. Arya, ever restless, was never long in one place. Some years she sailed east, others she hunted in the mountains. Her stories, carried back by wind and word, were legends before they reached Winterfell. Sometimes she came home with a new scar, or a pouch of strange seeds, or a child rescued from some disaster or injustice in distant lands. In her wake, the household always seemed a little wilder, the world a little larger. Edric, who had spent so many years on the wall, rose to become Lord Commander, guiding the Night's Watch into a new age. He forged alliances with the free folk, built new towers of stone and timber, and reworked the oaths so that women and girls could join the Watch as equals. With wildling spearwives and northern rangers, the Watch was stronger than it had been in 100 years. The wildlings themselves, now called the Free Folk by all, traded openly at Mole's Town, and every summer their children ran with the wolf pups of Winterfell, swimming in the pools below the Godswood, learning the songs of both old and new. In the south, peace grew more fragile. The council at Old Town had become a nest of rivalries, Tyrell and Martell bickering over taxes, the Lannister remnant grasping for influence, the Ironborn raiding as far as the Arbor and Shield Islands. Daenerys, grown old and wise, still held court in Highgarden, but her line was thin, her children lost to sickness and politics. The lords of the Vale and Riverlands pressed for more autonomy, and while war never came outright, the threat of it was a shadow always present. Yet none dared march on the north. Not with the tales that traveled of Winterfell's strength, of Lyra's justice, of Edric's watchful eyes. When the south sent envoys north once a year for the spring moot, they arrived tired, uncertain, and always wary, but they left with casks of mead, baskets of apples, and the memory of nights spent in laughter beneath the banners in the great hall. The North remembered. The North forgave, but did not forget. Time wore on. The cycle of seasons returned. Harder now, the winters colder, the summers shorter. The great glaciers crept southward, pressing the wild coasts and pushing herds and villages before them. The North adapted as it always had. Crops changed, hunting parties pushed farther, trade with the Iron Islands and Skagos grew ever more vital. When the sea froze solid for 3 weeks in one bitter winter, Lyra led a caravan on foot to Skagos, returning with sledges full of whale meat, wool, and sealskins. She laughed when her bannermen complained of the cold, and when she returned, she had more stories than bruises. Cregan's children sailed the White Knife as often as they rode the King's Road, trading with the South for rare fruits and spices, returning with tales of treacherous storms and islands haunted by the ghosts of kings. When Deepwood Motte was attacked by reavers from the sea, Cregan's eldest daughter led the defense, rallying the household guard and turning back the invaders with fire arrows and old Skagosi magic. The North was not to be taken lightly. Arya's descendants, if such they could be called, for no one ever learned how many children or grandchildren she had in truth, spread from the wild woods to the cities, found on every ship and in every port, carrying news, steel, and wild laughter. When Jay's great-grandson was born, Arya herself was there, silver-haired and hard-eyed, placing a tiny dagger in the newborn's hand and declaring him one of the pack. Bran watched it all. As Lyra aged, as Cregan and his sons passed into legend, as Edric's face grew as weathered as the wall, Bran endured. Some say he saw the end of all things, but never spoke of it, only smiled, as if privy to some secret joke. In Oldtown, the council at last fractured, as all such bodies do. The Reach and Dorne formed a southern league, seeking to outmaneuver the Ironborn, who raided the Lannister coast with increasing boldness. New kings rose in the Riverlands and the Vale, but they ruled by consent, not conquest. Every lord learned from the tale of the North, from Lyanna's rebellion and Jay's steady rule. No one declared themselves king of Westeros again. Daenerys died peacefully in Highgarden, mourned by her household but with little of the old magic left in her line. Her grandchildren scattered, some east to Pentos and Volantis, some west to the Reach towns and fields, where they married and raised families far from the shadow of thrones. As the years drifted into decades, the memory of the old wars faded, first from fear, then from pain, finally into story. Children played in the Godswood, running with wolf pups and laughing at the tales of dragons and White Walkers, never believing that such things could have been real. The North never forgot. Each autumn, on the day Jay Stark was buried, Lyra gathered the household beneath the heart tree. Bran presided, now so thin he seemed barely flesh at all, eyes bright as stars. Arya always came, and Cregan, and sometimes Edric if he could leave the watch. They sang the old songs, lit lanterns in memory of the lost, told stories of peace and hardship, of the snow and the fire, of the pack that survived. On the 100th year after Lyanna's rebellion, Lyra's great-grandson, another Jay, stood before the heart tree, holding his newborn daughter in one arm and his father's old sword in the other. Snow fell around them, the branches heavy with frost. He spoke in the old tongue, words Bran had taught him, pledging that Winterfell would always stand for peace, for kin, for the hope of spring. When the gathering ended, and the music drifted up to the cold stars, Arya walked the walls, her shadow long in the moonlight. She paused, looking out across the empty moors, the glint of the frozen river, the distant lights of Deepwood Moat. She smiled, thinking of Lyanna, of Jay, of Ned, of the long line that stretched behind and ahead. "We endured," she whispered, letting the words be carried by the wind. "And that is enough." In the crypts below, the cold stone did not echo, but above, the heart tree's leaves rustled, and the wolves howled to the moon. Years turned, and the world kept spinning, slow and sure, the old wheel broken and mended and broken again. But the pack survived, together. And so did the story written in snow, remembered in the North, in the song of every child, every wolf, every whisper of the old gods. And so, through peace and pain, through spring and snow, the North remained. The end was never the end, but only the start of another winter, another day, another tale, always waiting to be told.